My family called me a worker bee who'd never owned property and gave my brother a $15,000 check and a co-signed mortgage. I owned 3 buildings when they said it. Then a magazine published my story, and the family group chat absolutely lost their minds. Hey Reddit, my family thought I was the fuck-up who'd never amount to anything. So I built a real estate empire in complete silence, while they weren't looking. Then a newspaper article exposed everything. Before we get to the fallout, let me start from the beginning. My name's Marcus Hayes. I'm 29, been working as an assistant property manager for the last 6 years, making $43,000 a year. Well, I was. Quit 3 months ago, but my family doesn't know that yet. They don't know a lot of things about me, actually. Sunday brunch at my parents' place. They live in this cookie-cutter McMansion in the suburbs. 4 bedrooms for 2 people, because Dad's a middle manager who likes people to think he's more important than he is. Mom sells real estate but has never actually invested in it, which is ironic considering what I'm about to tell you. I was sitting at their dining table halfway through some dry chicken breast when Mom walked over to my younger brother Tyler with an envelope. Not a birthday card or anything, just some random Sunday in April. Tyler opened it. His eyes went wide. Holy shit, are you serious? Dad grinned like he just closed a business deal. You're ready, son. Time to invest in your future. Tyler pulled out a check and held it up. $15,000. But wait, there's more. Dad also handed him pre-approval papers for a $400,000 mortgage that he'd co-signed. Our future homeowner, Mom said, practically glowing. Tyler's 25. He got fired from a startup last year for literally sleeping at his desk. He Venmo requests our parents for gas money every other week. His credit score is so bad that Capital One sends him rejection letters as a courtesy. But sure, he's ready for a $400,000 mortgage. I kept chewing my chicken, which suddenly tasted like cardboard and disappointment. That's awesome, man, I said. And I meant it, sort of. Here's the thing, though. What they didn't know, what none of them knew sitting there celebrating Tyler's big moment, was that 2 weeks earlier, I'd sat in a title office and signed papers on my second property. A triplex. 3 units, all rented, generating $2,100 a month. And they had no fucking clue I already owned a 4-unit building I'd been quietly running for 18 months. But I wasn't about to tell them that. Not yet. Mom looked at me like she just remembered I existed. How's your apartment, Marcus? Still in that same place? Still in that same place. Like it was a holding cell I'd eventually get parole from. Yeah, I said. Actually, I've been thinking about buying something. Maybe a small multifamily property. The reaction was immediate. Tyler literally spit his orange juice back into his glass, laughing. Dad set down his fork and looked at me like I just said I was joining the circus. Marcus, come on. Do you even know what a cap rate is? I did, actually. I could calculate it in my sleep at this point. But I just shrugged. Investment property is way over your head, Dad continued. You manage apartments, you don't own them. Big difference. Mom reached over and patted my hand, in that way that's supposed to be comforting, but really just feels condescending as hell. We just want what's best for you, sweetie. Maybe you should focus on renting something nicer first. Baby steps. Baby steps. At 29. Then Uncle Frank showed up. Dad's older brother owns a couple car dealerships, never lets anyone forget it. He walked in wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent, grabbed a plate, and immediately inserted himself into the conversation. What are we talking about? Marcus thinks he's going to buy investment property, Tyler said, still smirking. Frank laughed, actually laughed, and clapped me on the shoulder. Look, kid, not everyone's cut out for investing. Nothing wrong with being a worker bee, right? Somebody's got to rent those properties. Worker bee. The table went quiet for a second, then everyone just moved on. Started talking about Tyler's house hunt, what neighborhoods he should look at, whether he should get a home inspection or waive it to be competitive. I excused myself to the bathroom, stood there staring at myself in the mirror, the one with the stupid live laugh love sign next to it. I didn't punch the wall or yell or have some dramatic breakdown. I just went cold. Made a decision right there that I wasn't going to tell them a goddamn thing until I was so far ahead they'd get whiplash looking up at me. On my way out, Mom caught me in the hallway. Oh, I meant to tell you. I saw Sarah on Facebook last month. My ex-fiancé. We broke up 2 years ago. She's engaged now, Mom continued. The ring is gorgeous. She looks really happy. I smiled and nodded, even though mentioning Sarah was like pressing on a bruise that never fully healed. That's great for her, I said. But that's a story for later. I drove home in my 2009 Mazda 3, pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, The one above the laundromat where the walls are so thin. I can hear my neighbor Derek's entire life falling apart at 2 a.m. Sat in my car for a minute. Watched that check engine light glow. Then I smiled. Because what they didn't know, what none of them sitting in that McMansion knew while they toasted Tyler's future, was that I'd already started. 2 weeks ago, I closed on my second property, a triplex for $122,000. But the real kicker? 18 months earlier, I'd already bought my first building, a 4-unit apartment complex. Been a landlord this whole time, and they never asked enough questions to find out. I was already cash flowing $511 a month. While they were planning Tyler's first house, I was already building an empire. And they had no idea. I pulled out my phone and texted my boy Jamal, the only person who knew what I was really doing. Just left my parents' place. Tyler got $15,000 and a cosign for his house. He replied immediately, "Damn, you tell them about your property?" "Nope." "Good. Let them sleep on it. Keep building." I started the car and drove home. I had a property to manage, tenants to take care of, an empire to build, and a whole lot of people to prove wrong. 2 years ago, I was engaged to Sarah. We'd been together for 3 years, and I was planning to propose. Had the ring picked out and everything. $2,800 at a local jeweler. I was also saving for my first investment property at the same time, splitting my savings between the two. Then one night, Sarah came over and just ended it. "I need stability, Marcus. A real plan." I told her I had a plan. Told her about the property I was saving for, how real estate could set us up for the future. She looked at me like I was delusional. "That's not a plan, that's a fantasy. I need someone who's grounded." She left, took her stuff over the next week, blocked me on everything. About 6 months later, I ran into her friend Jen at the grocery store. Jen had a couple drinks in her and told me something I wasn't supposed to know. "Your mom called Sarah, you know. Had a whole conversation about you." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Yeah, like a month before Sarah ended things. Your mom told her she was worried about you. Said you were a nice guy, but you'd probably never really amount to much, and Sarah should know what she was signing up for." I just stood there in the frozen food aisle, processing that my own mother had sabotaged my relationship. I thanked Jen, went home, and made a decision right there. I was going to build everything Sarah said I couldn't. And my family was never going to know about it until I was already successful. Returned the engagement ring the next day. Got $2,400 back. Added it to my property fund. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've been saving like my life depended on it. 4 years total of saving, but the last 2 years were different. I had something to prove. I kept my assistant property manager job, $43,000 a year. On weekends, I did handyman work for $40 an hour, cash, learned how to fix everything. Jamal's a mortgage broker, been my best friend since high school. When I told him my plan, he didn't laugh. He just helped me build my credit and get pre-approved. While saving, I was learning. Real estate courses, 14 books, Bigger Pockets forums. After 4 years, I had $28,000 saved. Found this apartment building, 4 units, needed work. Owner was tired of dealing with tenants. Listed at $165,000, we settled at $160,000. That was my first property. Closed on it in October, 2.5 years ago. 6 months after Sarah left. Took the worst unit and lived in it for the required year to satisfy the FHA loan. Once that year was up, I moved into a cheap apartment above a laundromat to maximize cash flow. Rented out all 4 units. That building was already making me $400 a month when Tyler got his $15,000 check. They just didn't know it. Then 3 months ago, I quit my property manager job. Started my own property management company instead. Found 3 small investors who needed someone to manage their properties. Charged them 8% of monthly rent. Between the 3 of them, I was making $2,800 a month. Combined with my own building's cash flow, I was making $3,200 a month. More than my old job, and I set my own schedule. And my family had no idea. At Sunday dinners, Mom would ask, "How's work?" "Good. Busy." She never asked what I was busy with. 2 weeks before Tyler got his $15,000 check, I closed on the triplex. Found it on Zillow at 2 a.m. Foreclosure property, looked rough. $135,000 asking price. After negotiation and inspection issues, got it for $122,000 with a $3,000 credit. Used another FHA loan. Put down $4,445. Total out of pocket, $7,645. I'd lived in the 4-unit for the required 12 months and moved out, so I qualified for another owner-occupied FHA loan on the triplex. Told the lender I'd be moving into one of the units. which was true for exactly the minimum required time. That's the loophole most people don't know about. Jamal helped me through the whole process. "You own 2 buildings now, bro," he said. "Yeah, and nobody knows but you." He raised his soda. "Keep it that way." So when I sat at that brunch listening to them talk about Tyler's big house plans, I just smiled, because I was already 10 steps ahead. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Text from Maria, one of my tenants at the triplex. "Hey Marcus, sorry to bother you, but the kitchen sink is dripping pretty bad. Can you take a look?" I texted back, "I'll be there tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. work? Perfect, thank you so much." I set my phone down and looked around my small apartment. The water stain, the thin walls, Derek's music still playing. This was what Sarah missed out on. Not just the money or the properties, the purpose. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was building something real, and I was doing it completely alone. Arcade me. 3 months after that brunch, I was standing in an empty fourplex at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, holding a flashlight because half the electrical didn't work. Jamal was next to me, shaking his head. "Bro, this place is rough." "It's perfect," I said. The listing had been up for 2 days. Fourplex in a C-plus neighborhood, foreclosure, bank-owned. Asking price, $168,000. All 4 units were rented month to month, bringing in $2,950 combined. The place needed work. Peeling paint, outdated kitchens, that electrical issue, but the bones were solid. I'd already run the numbers about 50 times. With a conventional loan at 20% down, my mortgage would be around $1,100. After taxes, insurance, and setting aside for maintenance, I'd clear about $1,130 a month in cash flow. Problem was, I only had about $11,000 liquid after closing on the triplex. Needed $33,600 for the down payment. That's when Jamal suggested something I'd been reading about but hadn't tried yet. HELOC on your first building. You've got equity there. A home equity line of credit. Basically borrowing against the value of my apartment building to fund the next deal. Riskier, sure. More debt. But the math worked. Got approved for a $40,000 HELOC at 7.5% interest. Used $34,000 of it for the down payment and closing costs on the fourplex. We closed in early August. That's when the real work started. Every single weekend for 2 months, Jamal and I were at that fourplex. Painting, fixing cabinets, replacing light fixtures, patching drywall. YouTube University taught me most of it. The rest I learned by screwing up and doing it again. One Saturday, we were there from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Jamal was mudding drywall while I rewired outlets in Unit 3. We ordered pizza that never showed up because the delivery guy couldn't figure out which unit to go to. "This is insane," Jamal said, covered in drywall dust. "You know that, right?" "Probably. You're moving way faster than most investors. You sure you're not taking on too much?" I stopped what I was doing. Every day I wait is another day they're right about me. He got quiet, then nodded. "Fair enough." During all this, family dinners kept happening. I'd been skipping some, but Mom guilt-tripped me into coming to Tyler's big closing celebration dinner. Showed up still sore from demolishing a bathroom the day before. Tyler was walking everyone through photos of his new house on his phone. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, granite countertops, the whole suburban dream package. "The backyard is huge," Ashley said, zooming in on a photo. "Perfect for kids someday." Everyone oohed and awed. I said congratulations, ate my pot roast, and left after an hour. Told them I had work early the next morning. What I actually had was more drywall to finish at the fourplex. By October, all 4 units were renovated and fully rented. Total monthly rent, $2,950. My mortgage, $1,100. HELOC payment, $220. After everything, I was clearing $1,130 a month. Combined with my 4-unit building, $400 per month, the triplex, $511 per month, and my property management business, $2,800 per month, I was making $4,841 a month total. More than my old job ever paid me. That night, I sat in my apartment and did something I hadn't done in a while. Opened up a spreadsheet and looked at my actual numbers. 2 properties owned. Combined value, $282,000. Total cash flow, $1,530 per month passive. Property management income, $2,800 per month active. Total monthly income, $4,330. I was 29 years old. No college degree, no family money, no inheritance. And I was building something real. My phone buzzed. Text from one of my property management clients asking if I could take on another building for them. I replied yes. Then I opened Zillow and started looking for property number 3. Because I wasn't done yet. Not even close. November hit and Uncle Frank sent a group text to the whole family. Big announcement. Got a new lake house. Everyone's invited for the weekend. No excuses. Bringing the boat out one last time before winter. I stared at that text for a solid minute, trying to think of an excuse not to go. Jamal texted me separately. You going to that lake thing? Thinking about bailing. Don't. Go. Smile. Let them talk. You know what you're building. They don't. He was right. So I went. The lake house was exactly what you'd expect from Uncle Frank. 3 stories, huge deck, boat dock, the works. Probably cost him $600,000. He was outside grilling when I pulled up in my Mazda, parked between Tyler's Audi and Dad's Lexus. There he is, Frank yelled. Glad you could make it, kid. Inside, the place was magazine perfect. Mom and Ashley were in the kitchen making some kind of fancy salad. Tyler and Dad were on the deck with drinks. Jessica and her husband Tom were setting up cornhole in the yard. I grabbed a soda from the cooler and tried to blend into the background. Dinner was on the back deck. Frank grilled steaks, everyone was drinking, and within 20 minutes they were on me again. Career advice from Uncle Frank. Dating advice from Ashley. Tyler asking what my plan was. Same apartment, same car. Mom saying I needed to settle down. Dad agreeing I was wasting my potential. Same shit, different location. You gotta take some real risks, Uncle Frank said. Build something. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're right, I said, standing up. I should take more risks. Where are you going? Mom asked. Getting some air? I walked down to the dock, sat at the end with my feet hanging over the water. The sun was almost down. Everything was quiet except for the sound of them laughing back at the house. My phone buzzed. Email notification from my property management software. One of my tenants had submitted a maintenance request. Leaking faucet, unit 2 at the fourplex. Then another buzz. Text from Jamal. Property number 3 just hit the market. Duplex. $98,000. Divorce sale. Motivated seller. You in? I texted back. Send me everything. 30 seconds later, my phone lit up with the listing. Duplex on the east side, needed cosmetic work but structurally solid. Both units rented at $875 each. Total rent, $1,750 per month. Listed for $98,000. Jamal called immediately. You see it? Yeah. What do you think? I looked back at the lake house, at my family celebrating Frank's success, at Tyler probably on his 4th drink, at all of them who thought I was going nowhere. I think we should make an offer tonight. Tonight? Don't you want to see it first? I trust your judgment. What do you think it's worth? Honestly? It's priced right. Maybe slightly under market. The divorce thing means they want it gone fast. I'd offer $95,000. Do it. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. We hung up and I sat there for another minute. Checked my bank account on my phone. Between my savings and available credit, I could swing the down payment. This would be property number 4. My portfolio would be worth over $560,000 total. And I was sitting on a dock at a lake house owned by a man who called me a worker bee 2 months ago. I walked back to the party. Mom was by the grill talking to Frank. You okay, honey? She asked. Yeah, actually, I need to head out. Already? You just got here a few hours ago. Got some work stuff to handle. Uncle Frank turned around, spatula in hand. Work stuff on a Saturday night? See? That's your problem, Marcus. You don't know how to relax. You're going to burn out working for other people. I smiled. Yeah, you're probably right. Dad walked over. Stay for dessert at least. Your mom made her chocolate cake. Can't. Really gotta go. Tyler stumbled over, clearly drunk now. Bro, you're always leaving early. What's so important? Just got something I need to take care of. What, someone's toilet broke? He laughed at his own joke. Something like that. I said goodbye to everyone, walked to my Mazda, and got in. Through the big windows of the lake house, I could see them all inside now, laughing, having a good time. My phone buzzed. Jamal. Offer submitted. $95,000. I told them we can close in 3 weeks if they accept. I backed out of the driveway and headed home. Let them have their lake house and their stakes and their assumptions about my life. I had an empire to build. And 3 weeks from now, I'd own another piece of it. The duplex seller accepted my offer the next morning. $95,000, close in 3 weeks, no inspection contingencies. Jamal called me at 8 a.m. with the news. They're desperate. Signed the acceptance before their coffee got cold. We closed in late November. Needed about $4,200 in cosmetic work. Paint, New carpet in one unit, cabinet hardware. Spent 2 weekends doing most of it myself. Both units stayed rented through the whole process. Final numbers. $19,000 down payment. Mortgage, $620 per month. Rent, $1,750 per month. Expenses around $240 per month. Cash flow, $890 per month. That brought my total passive income to $2,931 per month across 4 properties. Add in my property management business at $2,800 per month. I was making $5,731 total. I was clearing more money than I ever had in my life, and my family thought I was struggling. I'd been avoiding Sunday dinners for like 6 weeks. Mom kept calling, leaving voicemails about how I was becoming a stranger. Finally went to one in early December. Tyler and Ashley were already there when I arrived. Tyler had this weird energy, like he was excited about something. We made it through the appetizers before he stood up. Ashley and I have an announcement. We're pregnant. The room exploded. Mom started crying immediately. Dad hugged them both. Jessica squealed and started asking about due dates. I clapped along, said congratulations. Meant it, mostly. This is wonderful, Mom said, wiping her eyes. Our first grandchild. The rest of dinner naturally revolved around baby stuff. Names, nursery ideas, all that. Then Dad said it. You'll need more space eventually. When you're ready to upgrade, we can help again. Family investment. Tyler nodded. Yeah, we've been talking about that. I cut into my turkey and kept quiet. Jessica turned to me. What about you, Marcus? Still doing property management? Real estate investing now. The table got quiet. Investing? Dad asked. What do you mean? Buying properties, renting them out. Tyler laughed. Dude, you'd need like $30,000 just for one down payment. Where would you even get that? I've been saving. Dad set down his fork. Marcus, be realistic. Investment property isn't for beginners. You could lose everything. Mom touched my hand. Maybe you should go back to school first. Get your MBA. Then maybe look at real estate. Uncle Frank chimed in. I know a guy who lost his shirt on rental properties, had to file bankruptcy. It's not as easy as YouTube makes it look. I took a drink of water. I appreciate the advice. The conversation shifted back to Tyler's baby. After dinner, Tyler pulled me aside. Between you and me, my mortgage is killing me, barely breaking even most months. The golden child was struggling. Just be careful if you try this. I almost told him I owned 4 properties. Instead, thanks for the heads up. My phone buzzed. Email from Jamal with a new listing. Single-family house near a state park, $142,000, good area for short-term rentals. I stared at that listing while drying a plate. Property number 4. I forwarded it to Jamal. Thoughts? He replied, could work as an Airbnb. Tourist area. I can run the numbers tomorrow. I grabbed my keys and slipped out the side door. Jamal called as I was backing out. You serious about this one? Run the numbers. If they work, let's move. The house closed in mid-January. Owner-occupied loan, 5% down, $7,100. Instead of long-term renting, I furnished it as a short-term rental. Spent $5,800 on furniture. IKEA mostly. Facebook Marketplace for the rest. Took photos with my phone and a cheap tripod. Listed it on Airbnb in late January. Booked within 3 days. By February, that house was averaging $3,800 a month. After mortgage, utilities, cleaning, and supplies, I was clearing $2,150 a month, more than both my other rental properties combined. Total portfolio, 5 properties, $5,081 a month passive, plus property management, $2,800. Total monthly income, $7,881. Almost double what my old job paid. Still driving the Mazda 3. Still living above the laundromat. But now it was a choice. Late February, my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Marcus Hayes? Yeah. Hi, Marcus. My name is Jennifer Green. I'm a reporter with Metro Business Monthly. We're doing a feature on young entrepreneurs in real estate. Your name came up in public records. You've purchased 4 properties in 18 months. Would you be interested in an interview? I almost said no immediately. Can I think about it? Of course. Here's my number. Let me know by Friday. I hung up and sat there. Called Jamal. A reporter just called me. Wants to interview me about my properties. Silence. What should I do? What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to stay under the radar. And the other part? I didn't answer. You've been invisible for 2 years, man. Since Sarah. Since your family wrote you off. Maybe it's time they actually see you. I called Jennifer back the next day. I'll do the interview. The interview was at a coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon. Jennifer Green showed up with an actual notebook and pen, not just her phone. Mid-30s professional asked good questions. So walk me through how you started, she said. I told her everything. The 4 years of saving, the courses I took, the 14 books I read, the weekends doing handyman work for $40 an hour, living in a tiny apartment above a laundromat to keep expenses low. Did your family help you get started? Loan you money for down payments? I paused. This was the moment. No, they didn't help. They didn't even know I was doing this. She looked up from her notes. They didn't know? Nope. They didn't think I was capable. Still don't, actually. Why not? Because I'm not the golden child. My younger brother got $15,000 cash and a co-signed mortgage from our parents. I got told to rent something nicer and take baby steps. She was writing fast now. So you did this completely on your own? Yeah. Me and my best friend Jamal. He's a mortgage broker. Helped me navigate the financing. But no family money. No inheritance. Just saving and learning. How much are your properties worth now? Combined? About $687,000. They generate around $4,600 a month in passive cash flow. And you're 29? Yep. What would you say to other young people who feel like they don't have advantages? I thought about it. That success isn't given. It's built. Property by property. Decision by decision. You don't need anyone's permission to win. She smiled and wrote that down word for word. The interview wrapped up after about an hour. She said the article would run in early March, gave me a heads up that they'd want to use a photo. Jamal took the photo the next week. Me standing in front of the fourplex, arms crossed, slight smile. I felt ridiculous posing for it, but Jamal said I looked like I meant business. This photo's gonna make people mad, he said. Good. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning, March 8th. Jennifer emailed me the link at 7 a.m. I clicked it. Headline, From Property Manager to Portfolio Owner, How One 29-Year-Old Built $687,000 in Real Estate Without Family Money. Subheading, Marcus Hayes spent 2 years building an empire in silence. Now he's ready to share his story. There was the photo of me. Below it, a full breakdown of my 4 properties, the monthly cash flow, the timeline, everything. The article went into detail about my methods. Living cheap, the Mazda 3 with a check engine light I never fixed, learning from YouTube and books, doing my own repairs. There was a section about starting after a difficult breakup. They didn't name Sarah, just said, a painful end to a long-term relationship became the catalyst for Hayes to focus entirely on building financial independence. And there, highlighted in a pull quote, success isn't given. It's built. I didn't need anyone's permission to win. I sat there staring at my laptop screen, reading it 3 times. Then my phone started going crazy. Mom calling. I was at Property 2 fixing a leaking faucet. Let it go to voicemail. Dad calling. Ignored it. Tyler calling. Ignored it. I checked the family group chat. It was chaos. Mom had sent 6 messages in all caps demanding I call her. Dad wanted to talk immediately. Tyler kept saying, this has to be fake, right? Ashley asked if this was really me. Jessica was sending shocked emojis. Uncle Frank suddenly wanted to talk business. I watched the messages pile up, watched them process something that didn't fit their narrative. By noon, I had 21 missed calls. I turned off my phone, sat in my truck outside Property 2 just breathing. This was real now. No more hiding. Jamal pulled up about 20 minutes later. I'd texted him before turning off my phone. He got in the passenger seat. How you feeling? I don't know yet. You know they're losing their minds right now. Yeah. What are you gonna do? Nothing. Let them sit with it. We sat in silence for a minute. Sarah's gonna see this, Jamal said. I hadn't thought about that. Probably. How's that feel? Like I just won something I didn't know I was competing for. We grabbed lunch at this taco place nearby. I kept my phone off the whole time. Jamal kept checking his and laughing. What? Your article's getting shared all over real estate groups. People are asking questions. You're kind of blowing up. Great. This is good, bro. You're inspiring people. Maybe, or maybe I just wanted my family to see what they missed. Got home around 6 p.m., turned my phone back on. 49 missed calls. 127 text messages. The family group chat was chaos. Panic, confusion. Uncle Frank claiming he always knew I had potential. At 10 p.m., I responded, yeah, it's real. Built it myself. No handouts needed. Then I drove to the triplex and sat on the front porch. This was the building I'd owned when they handed Tyler that $15,000 check. When Uncle Frank called me a worker bee. I'd owned this the whole time, and they had no idea. For For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. They finally saw me. Thursday morning, my phone had 34 new messages. I ignored all of them except one. Mom, please come to dinner Sunday. We need to talk. As a family, please. I stared at that message for probably 10 minutes. Finally replied, "What time?" 4 p.m. Thank you. I didn't respond after that. Sunday was 4 days away. 4 days for them to process that everything they thought they knew about me was wrong. I spent those 4 days working, fixed a garbage disposal at the fourplex, handled a checkout at the Airbnb, met with a potential new property management client, lived my life like normal, because it was normal now. Sunday came faster than I wanted, but I was ready. I showed up at 4:20 p.m. on Sunday, 20 minutes late on purpose, wearing a hoodie and jeans, hadn't shaved in 3 days. Tyler's Audi was in the driveway, still making $680 monthly payments on it. Walked in. Everyone was already sitting at the dining table. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad looked tired, older somehow. Tyler and Ashley on one side, Jessica and Tom on the other. Uncle Frank was there too. Of course he was. I sat down in my usual spot. Nobody was eating yet. They'd been waiting for me. Dad cleared his throat. "Marcus, we read the article. Okay, 5 properties, $687,000, all in less than 2 years. 18 months, actually. But yeah," Mom leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell us? We're your family." "I did tell you. At brunch, remember?" You laughed. Silence. "We didn't think you were serious." "Exactly. That's the problem." Tyler spoke up. "Bro, this is insane. How did you even afford the down payments? Saved for 4 years. $28,000. Every spare cent. 4 years! While we were..." He stopped himself. "While you were getting checks in the mail?" "Yeah." Uncle Frank tried to jump in. "Look, Marcus, I think there's been some misunderstandings." I cut him off. "You called me a worker bee. At your lake house. In front of everyone. Said I should stick to renting. I was just trying to give advice. You made me feel like shit for wanting more. And now you want to talk business, right? That's why you're here?" Frank shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I mean, if you're looking for investors or partners." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Nah, I'm good. Worker bees don't take on partners." Dad set down his fork. "Son, we owe you an apology." "Yeah, you do. I told you real estate was over your head. I was wrong." Mom started tearing up. "We should have believed in you. Should have supported you. You should have, but you didn't. And that's fine. I didn't need you to. But we could have helped. We could have been there." I looked directly at Mom. "Like you were there for Sarah?" The table went dead quiet. "When you told her I'd never amount to anything. When you warned her she was making a mistake, were you planning to be there for me then?" Mom's face went white. "How did you..." "She told me. Eventually. After she left. Said you called her. Had a heart-to-heart. Told her I was a nice guy, but probably not going anywhere in life." Dad turned to Mom. "Is that true?" Mom was crying harder now. "I thought I was protecting her." "You were protecting Tyler. Making sure I stayed small so he could stay big." Tyler tried to defend himself. "That's not fair. You asked me to fix your house. 8 hours of work. Free. Ashley posted about it like you did it. You didn't even say thank you. I didn't know she was going to post." "You never stopped her either." Ashley finally spoke. "I just thought it was cute. You thought it was content." Nobody said anything. I stood up. "Here's the thing. I forgive you. All of you. Because holding on to this is exhausting. And I've got better things to do." Mom reached for me. "So we can start over? We can..." "No. We're not starting over. You can't unsay what you said. You can't give me back those 2 years. Then what do you want from us?" "Nothing. That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore." I looked at Tyler. "Good luck with the house, man. And the baby." "I mean that." Looked at Uncle Frank. "Enjoy your lake house." He looked at Mom and Dad. "I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending we're something we're not. You can call me if there's an emergency. But I'm not coming to dinners where I'm the punchline anymore. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I'm just choosing myself for once." I walked out, got in my Mazda, started it. That check engine light glowed like always. Through the window, I could see them all sitting there, processing. I backed out and drove away. 6 months later, property number 6 closed in September. 6-unit apartment building. $340,000 purchase price. Put down $68,000 using a combination of HELOC and cash savings. Monthly cash flow. $2,900. Total portfolio. 20 units across 6 properties. $7,981 a month in passive income. I posted about it on LinkedIn for the first time. Photo of me holding the keys to the 6 unit. Standing in front of it. Big smile. Caption. Property number 6. Started with $28,000 and a dream. Built with discipline, sacrifice, and zero permission from anyone. To everyone who told me I couldn't, thank you for the fuel. To everyone grinding in silence right now, your time is coming. Stay focused. Stay quiet. Let your results do the talking. The post blew up. 3,200 likes in 2 days. 487 comments. Tyler liked it. Didn't comment. Mom commented, "So proud of you." I didn't respond. Then I saw another comment. Sarah M. "This is amazing, Marcus. Really happy for you." 10 minutes later, a DM. "Can we talk sometime? I think I made a mistake. I read it twice." Then deleted the thread without responding. That evening, I was sitting on the porch of the triplex, property number 2, where it all started, when Dad called. I let it ring. Listened to the voicemail. "Hey, son, it's Dad. You were right about all of it. We didn't see you. We didn't believe in you. What you've built. I couldn't have done that. I'm sorry I made you feel small. If you're willing, I'd like to take you to dinner. Just us. Call me back if you want. I'll understand if you don't." I saved the voicemail. Didn't call back. Not tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. But I saved it. Because growth isn't about burning bridges. It's about building new ones. On your own terms. When you're ready. The grind continues. But now I'm not grinding to prove anything to anyone. I'm grinding because I love it. And that makes all the difference. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. My manager blocked my raise and smirked, saying, "If you quit, I'll replace you by Friday." So I let him try for 1 week, and by day 5, the vendor contracts collapsed and legal got dragged into the mess. So yeah, I'm the guy who just watched his former manager lose about $3 million in vendor contracts because he thought I was bluffing. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. Let me back up. I worked at a mid-sized manufacturing company in the Midwest. Not some fancy Silicon Valley startup or anything, just a solid operation that makes industrial parts for automotive suppliers. The kind of place where people actually make things instead of having meetings about meetings. We employed about 300 people across 2 facilities, and our annual revenue hovered around 80 million. Not huge, but respectable. I was the procurement manager, which basically meant I handled all the vendor relationships, negotiated contracts, and made sure our supply chain didn't implode every other week. Every single component that went into our products came through me. Raw materials, packaging, tools, machinery parts, safety equipment, you name it. If we needed to buy it, I was the guy who made it happen. The role was more complex than it sounds. I wasn't just ordering stuff from a catalog. I was managing relationships with 47 different suppliers across 12 states and 3 countries. Each one had their own quirks, lead times, quality standards, and pricing structures. Some were massive corporations with rigid processes. Others were family-owned operations, where a handshake still meant something. My job was knowing which was which. Knowing who to call when we needed something yesterday. Knowing who'd work with us on payment terms when cash flow got tight. Knowing which suppliers would prioritize our orders during shortages, and which ones would ghost us the second a bigger customer came calling. I'd been there for 6 years. Started as a junior buyer right out of college and worked my way up. Learned the ropes, built relationships with suppliers, figured out who was reliable and who would ghost you the second prices went up. By year 3, I was running the whole department. Just me and 2 assistants who mostly handled data entry and phone calls. Those first few years were tough. I made mistakes. Ordered too much of something, not enough of something else. Missed a delivery deadline that shut down our assembly line for half a day. That cost the company about $50,000 and nearly got me fired. I learned from it though. Started building in buffer time, created backup supplier relationships, developed a 6th sense for when something was about to go wrong. By year 4, I had the system humming. I'd renegotiated most of our major contracts, saving the company about $800,000 annually. I'd built personal relationships with key account managers at every supplier, knew their kids' names, sent Christmas cards, remembered birthdays. That probably sounds corny, but in B2B relationships, that stuff matters. People do business with people they like. I also developed a proprietary tracking system that nobody else understood. It wasn't in any manual or software program. It was a combination of spreadsheets, notes, and pure institutional knowledge. I knew which suppliers had quality issues with specific SKUs. I knew which ones would quietly extend payment terms if we were having a rough month. I knew which account managers would take my call at 7 p.m. on a Saturday if we had an emergency. That knowledge wasn't written down anywhere. It couldn't be. Half of it was reading between the lines of conversations, understanding the politics at supplier companies, knowing when to push and when to back off. The job wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it. Really good. Our costs were down 22% from when I started. Lead times were better. Quality issues dropped. The CEO loved me because I made his quarterly reports look great. The operations team loved me because parts showed up when they were supposed to. Even accounting didn't hate me, which is saying something because procurement and accounting usually exist in a state of mutual passive aggression. I'd also saved the company's reputation more than once. There was the time our primary steel supplier went bankrupt with zero warning. I had a replacement sourced and shipping within 48 hours. Or when we had a quality issue with defective bearings that could have triggered a major recall. I worked with the supplier to identify the bad batch, got replacements expedited, and negotiated compensation for our trouble. No lawyers, no drama, just problem solving. The CEO had personally thanked me for that one. Told me I'd save the company somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in potential liability. I figured that was worth something come review time. I was wrong. Then we got a new VP of operations. His name was Gerald, mid-50s, came from some company in Ohio that went under 2 years after he left. Should have been a red flag, but the board wanted someone with experience, and Gerald talked a good game in interviews. He had an MBA from a decent school, 20-plus years in manufacturing, and a resume that looked impressive if you didn't dig too deep. From day one, Gerald had this vibe like he needed to prove he was the smartest guy in every room. He'd interrupt people in meetings to correct minor details that didn't matter. Someone would say a delivery was scheduled for Tuesday, and he'd jump in with, "Actually, according to the logistics report, it's arriving Tuesday afternoon at 2:17 p.m. Like the exact time mattered for a strategic discussion. He'd send emails at midnight just to show he was working late. Most of them were nitpicking minor issues or asking for reports that nobody had ever requested before. He wore expensive suits that looked ridiculous in a manufacturing plant, where everyone else wore business casual at best. The plant floor guys started calling him the Penguin behind his back because of how he waddled around in his three-piece suits trying to look important. But whatever. I've dealt with difficult bosses before. You smile, nod, do your job, and wait for them to either chill out or leave. Usually works. Gerald's thing was micromanagement. He wanted reports on everything, daily updates on supplier communications, copies of every email I sent to vendors, spreadsheets tracking metrics that nobody had ever cared about before. He wanted to know our inventory turnover ratio, broken down by supplier. He wanted aging reports on payables updated twice a week. He wanted to be CC'd on every purchase order over $1,000. It was annoying, but I complied. Figured he'd ease up once he realized I knew what I was doing. He never did. Instead, he started questioning my decisions. I'd negotiate a contract at a certain price point, and he'd email asking why I didn't get it cheaper. Never mind that I'd gotten us the best terms in the industry. Never mind that our margins on those parts were excellent. He always thought he knew better. The worst part was his complete lack of understanding about how supplier relationships actually worked. He seemed to think every vendor was trying to rip us off, that every negotiation was a zero-sum game where somebody had to lose. I tried explaining it to him once. Told him that strong supplier relationships meant better service, priority treatment during shortages, flexibility on terms when we needed it. He looked at me like I was naive, said something about how business is business, and we needed to maximize shareholder value. Cool. Except we weren't a publicly traded company, and treating suppliers like adversaries was a great way to end up at the bottom of their priority list. About 2 months into his tenure, he started sitting in on my supplier calls. Just showed up one day and announced he'd be joining. The first one was with Reynolds Industrial, our primary aluminum supplier. James, their account manager, and I had a great relationship. We'd been working together for 4 years. These calls were usually casual check-ins. Order volumes, delivery schedules, maybe some small talk about business conditions. Gerald turned it into an interrogation. Started asking James aggressive questions about their margins, their production costs, why they couldn't offer better pricing. James handled it professionally, but I could hear the tension in his voice. After we hung up, he called me back on my direct line. "What was that about?" he asked. "New VP," I said. "Sorry, he's still learning how things work." "Okay, well, maybe give me a heads up next time before you bring someone like that on a call." That was uncomfortable. I apologized again and made a mental note to keep Gerald away from supplier communications. Unfortunately, he had other ideas. About 4 months into his tenure, I had my annual review. I'd crushed every metric. Savings were up. On-time delivery was at 96%, which was basically unheard of in our industry. Customer complaints about parts quality were down to almost nothing. I'd renegotiated the Reynolds aluminum contract and saved us $320,000 annually. I'd found a new packaging supplier that cut costs by 18% while actually improving quality. I'd reduced our average lead time across all suppliers by 4 days, which meant less inventory sitting in our warehouse tying up cash. I walked into that review expecting a solid raise, maybe even a bonus. I'd been making $78,000 a year, which was decent, but below market rate for someone managing a department that saved the company multiple millions annually. I'd done my research. Similar roles in the area were paying between $90,000 and $100,000. Some of the bigger companies were offering even more. I'd even talked to a recruiter a few months back, just to test the market. She told me I was undervalued by at least $15,000, probably more like $20,000. Said companies were desperate for experienced procurement managers who actually knew what they were doing. Told me she could have me placed within a month if I was interested. I wasn't interested then. I liked my job, liked the company, liked the people I worked with. I just wanted to be paid fairly for the value I was delivering. Gerald sat across from me with this thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had my review printed out, which he slid across the table. I picked it up and started reading. Every category was marked meets expectations, not exceeds, not even exceeds in some areas. Just straight meets expectations across the board. I looked up at him. I'm confused. My performance this year has been significantly above baseline. We've had record cost savings, perfect quality metrics, industry-leading delivery times. How is that just meeting expectations? He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like some kind of cartoon villain. Well, that's an interesting question. The way I see it, those results are what we should expect from someone in your role. You're doing your job. That's good, but it's not exceptional. I've saved the company over $2 million in the past year alone, I said, keeping my voice level. That's 4 times my total compensation. How is that not exceptional? Those savings are built into the budget, Gerald said. We expect a certain level of cost reduction year over year. You're hitting targets, which is what you're paid to do. This was gaslighting, pure and simple. Those targets didn't exist before I created them. I'd set the benchmarks through actual performance, and now he was acting like they'd always been the standard. Okay, I said. Let's talk about the Reynolds contract renegotiation. I saved us over $300,000 annually with better terms and actually improved the relationship. That wasn't budgeted. That was proactive value creation. Gerald waved his hand dismissively. Any competent procurement manager should be constantly looking for better terms. Again, that's your job. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice level. I understand budget constraints, but I've delivered significant value. The cost savings alone from my work this year exceed $2 million. I'd like to discuss compensation adjustments. He set down his pen and looked at me with that thin smile again. Well, that's an interesting topic. I've been reviewing the budget, and frankly, I don't see room for increases right now. We need to be smart about spending. This was rich coming from the guy who just spent $15,000 remodeling his office with new furniture, a coffee bar, and some kind of fancy air purifier that supposedly improved cognitive function. The old office had been fine. This was just ego spending. With respect, I said, I've exceeded expectations across every measurable category. I've researched comparable positions, and the market rate for this role is significantly higher than my current salary. I'm at least $15,000 to $20,000 below market. Gerald's smile got wider, more condescending. You know, I hear this a lot from people. They look at some online salary surveys and think they're underpaid. But those surveys don't account for everything. The stability of working here, the benefits, the work-life balance. When you factor in the total compensation package, you're doing quite well. I'm not talking about online surveys, I said. I'm talking about direct conversations with recruiters and colleagues in similar roles. The market is clear. Well, Gerald said, sitting forward, you're welcome to explore other opportunities if you feel undervalued. But I should tell you, in my experience, people who threaten to leave rarely follow through. And if you did quit, I'd have you replaced by Friday. Procurement isn't exactly rocket science. There it was, that smirk, like he'd just checkmated me. He continued, apparently enjoying himself. I've managed procurement teams at much larger organizations. The fundamentals are simple. You find suppliers, you negotiate prices, you manage contracts. I could teach any reasonably intelligent person to do your job in a couple weeks. The idea that you're somehow irreplaceable is frankly, a bit naive. I sat there for about 10 seconds, just looking at him, processing what he'd said, processing the casual dismissal, the contempt, the absolute certainty that I was bluffing. Then I nodded slowly. That's good to know. I appreciate your honesty. Glad we understand each other, Gerald said. He picked up his pen again, a clear signal that the meeting was over. Now, I need you to prioritize the Reynolds contract renewal. I want it done by end of week. I stood up. Sure thing. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and opened my laptop. I had some emails to write. Here's the thing Gerald didn't understand about procurement. It's not just about ordering stuff and negotiating prices. It's about relationships, trust, institutional knowledge that doesn't exist in any manual or database. Our main suppliers weren't just vendors. They were partners I'd cultivated over years. I knew which account managers would go to bat for us during shortages. I knew which plants could turn around rush orders. I knew who to call when something went wrong, and I knew exactly what to say to keep them happy. Take Reynolds Industrial, for example. On paper, they were our aluminum supplier. We had a contract that spelled out pricing, delivery terms, quality standards, standard stuff. But the real relationship went way deeper than that. I knew that James, their account manager, had 2 kids in college. I knew his boss, Patricia, was nearing retirement and didn't want any drama in her final years. I knew their plant in Indiana had better quality control than their facility in Kentucky, so I always requested material from Indiana, even though it cost a bit more in shipping. I also knew that Reynolds had cash flow issues about 18 months back. Their biggest customer had delayed payments, and they were struggling to meet payroll. They didn't advertise this, obviously, but James and I had developed enough trust that he mentioned it over a dinner meeting. I worked with our accounting team to accelerate some of our payments to help them out. Cost us nothing since we were going to pay anyway, but the timing helped them avoid a crisis. 3 months later, when we had an emergency need for aluminum due to a production screw-up on our end, Reynolds moved heaven and earth to get us material on a 2-day turnaround. Normally, that would take 3 weeks. They bumped other customers, ran overtime shifts, and ate the expedite costs. James didn't even ask for premium pricing. He just made it happen because we'd help them when they needed it. That's the kind of relationship you can't build with aggressive emails and contract clauses. It takes years of showing up, being fair, and treating people like partners instead of commodities. All of that lived in my head. Sure, we had contracts and PO systems, but the real value was the relationships, the favors banked, the goodwill earned, the understanding that we'd take care of each other when it mattered. And Gerald thought he could replace that by Friday. I spent the next 2 days documenting exactly nothing. I CC'd Gerald on routine emails, attended meetings, acted normal. Meanwhile, I was updating my resume and reaching out to my network. I kept my feelers quiet. Didn't want word getting back to Gerald that I was actually looking. I reached out to former colleagues who'd moved to other companies. Contacted a few recruiters I'd worked with before. Kept everything off company email and phone. Tuesday night, I had a call with a recruiter named Anne who specialized in supply chain roles. I laid out what I was looking for. Similar role, better pay, management that actually valued expertise. She laughed and said she had 3 companies that would fight over me. By Wednesday, I had 2 preliminary interviews scheduled. Both were with companies I'd heard good things about. Both were offering significant pay bumps just to get me in the door. Thursday morning, I had a video interview with a competitor about 20 miles away. Mid-sized operation, similar to my current company, but better managed. The hiring manager was a woman named Linda, who'd been in procurement for 20 years. We clicked immediately. She understood the role, understood the challenges, and clearly valued what I brought to the table. She offered me the job before the interview was even over. $95,000 base salary plus quarterly bonuses tied to cost savings. Better benefits. Actual professional development budget. She wanted me to start as soon as possible. I need to give 2 weeks' notice, I said. Take whatever time you need, Linda said. We're just excited to have you joining the team. I told her I'd send her a formal acceptance by end of day Friday. We shook hands virtually and ended the call. I sat there for a few minutes, thinking it over, making sure I wasn't making an emotional decision. But the math was clear. $17,000 more in base salary, plus bonuses that could add another $10,000 to $15,000. A boss who actually respected the work. A company that wasn't run by someone with a fragile ego, and a management book from 1987. Yeah, this was the right move. Then I drafted my resignation letter. Kept it short and professional. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. I didn't mention Gerald's comments, didn't need to. Just thanked the company for the opportunity and wished them well. I printed it out on good paper stock, signed it in blue ink, and put it in a folder. Wanted it to look professional. Final. I walked into Gerald's office at 3 p.m. on Friday. He was on the phone, but he waved me in. I stood there waiting while he wrapped up some conversation about production schedules that he was clearly dominating despite not understanding the technical details. He kept using terms slightly wrong, and I could almost hear the person on the other end trying to politely correct him. When he hung up, he looked at me with mild annoyance. "What do you need?" "I'm resigning," I said, handing him the folder. "My last day is 2 weeks from today." I watched his face go through about 4 different expressions in rapid succession. First was confusion, like he couldn't quite process what I'd said, like the words made sense individually, but not together. Then annoyance, probably at the inconvenience of having to deal with this. Then something that looked like actual concern, maybe realizing this was actually happening, and he'd have to follow through on his boast about replacing me. Then that smirk came back, his default expression when he thought he had the upper hand. "Well," he said, unfolding the letter and scanning it quickly. His eyes moved faster than he was actually reading, just performing the act of reviewing it. "I appreciate the notice, but we don't need 2 weeks. You can clear out your desk today. I'll have someone cover your responsibilities starting Monday." Perfect. Exactly what I'd hoped for. "Your call," I said with a shrug. "I'll need to do an exit interview with HR. "I'll let them know," Gerald said. He was already looking at his computer, dismissing me. "Make sure you leave detailed notes about ongoing projects and supplier contacts." "Sure," I said, knowing full well I wouldn't be doing that. See, when you accept someone's resignation effective immediately, you're terminating their employment. They have no obligation to do anything beyond return company property. Gerald probably thought he was punishing me by not letting me work my notice. In reality, he just eliminated any responsibility I had to help with the transition. I went back to my office and started packing my personal items. Wasn't much. A few pictures of family vacations, some office supplies I'd bought myself because the company ones were terrible, a coffee mug from my alma mater, a plant that was somehow still alive, despite being in a windowless office for 3 years. I did not leave detailed notes. I did not document my supplier relationships. I did not create a transition plan or write up best practices. Gerald had accepted my resignation effective immediately, which meant I had zero obligation to do anything beyond pack my stuff and leave. Could I have been the bigger person and left everything documented anyway? Sure. But Gerald had spent 4 months micromanaging me, dismissing my work, and then told me to my face that I was easily replaceable and that procurement wasn't rocket science. He wanted to learn that lesson the hard way? Fine by me. My 2 assistants, Katie and Ben, stopped by while I was boxing things up. They both looked shell-shocked. "Is it true?" Katie asked. "You're leaving today?" "Yep. Because of Gerald." I looked at her. She was sharp, mid-20s, had been with me for about 2 years. She'd figure it out eventually, but I wasn't going to trash talk on my way out. "I got a better offer," I said. "Sometimes you have to make moves." Ben nodded. He was quieter than Katie, but equally capable. Had a good head for numbers and supplier analytics. "Are they hiring where you're going?" I wrote down Linda's contact information and handed it to him. "If things get weird here, reach out. Can't promise anything, but she's building a team." They both thanked me. Katie looked like she wanted to say more, but I could see Ben pulling her back. They knew what was coming even if they didn't want to admit it. The department was going to be chaos without someone who knew the relationships, and they'd be the ones dealing with it firsthand. I felt bad for them. They were good people who didn't deserve to get caught in the fallout of Gerald's ego, but I couldn't save them. They'd have to make their own calls about whether to stick around. On my way out, I stopped by to see Rachel in HR. She's good people, been there longer than anyone and actually cares about employees, which is rare in HR. Most HR departments exist to protect the company. Rachel actually tried to balance that with looking out for employees. "I'm heading out," I told her. "Gerald said you'd handle the exit paperwork." Her eyebrows went up. "He's accepting your resignation effective immediately?" "Yep." She sighed and pulled up something on her computer. "That's not standard protocol. We're supposed to have proper knowledge transfer, offboarding procedures, exit interviews done at the end of the notice period. But okay, I'll process everything. Do you have time for an exit interview now?" "Sure." We went into one of the small conference rooms. Rachel had a standard form with the usual questions. She went through them methodically, typing my responses. "Why are you leaving?" "Better opportunity at a competitor." "More money." "Better growth prospects." "What could we have done better?" "Could have addressed compensation concerns before it became an issue." "Would you recommend this company to others?" "Depends on the role and the management." She paused at that last one. "Can you elaborate?" The company has good people and solid fundamentals, I said carefully. But recent management changes have created some challenges. I'd recommend it to someone who's a good fit for the current leadership style. Rachel typed that, then stopped and looked at me. Off the record, sure, Gerald's going to screw this up, isn't he? I met her eyes. I think Gerald believes procurement is simpler than it actually is. He'll figure it out eventually. Question is how much it'll cost before he does. She nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I pushed back on his decision to let you go immediately. Told him we needed a proper transition period. He overruled me. Said he wanted to send a message that nobody's irreplaceable. Well, I said, he's about to find out if that's true. Can I give you some advice? Sure. Document everything about today. The time Gerald accepted your resignation. Exactly what he said. The fact that he terminated you effective immediately. Save any emails, just in case there's any weirdness later with final pay or benefits, or if he tries to claim you abandoned your position. I appreciated that. Rachel was covering her own bases too, protecting the company from potential liability, but she was also looking out for me. That's the balance good HR people walk. Will do, I said. And Rachel, you might want to update your own resume. I don't think this is going to get better before it gets worse. She gave me a sad smile. Already started. We shook hands, and I walked out to my car around 5:30. Threw my box in the back seat. Felt lighter than I had in months. The weekend was quiet. I didn't think about work, didn't stress about Monday. Just enjoyed being free. Monday morning at my new company was standard orientation stuff. Paperwork. Meeting the team. But the atmosphere was completely different. People actually seemed engaged. Nobody walking on eggshells. Linda met with me for about 2 hours. She was direct, asked good questions, clearly had a strategic vision. I hired you because you're an expert, she said. I'm not going to micromanage you. You'll have autonomy to make decisions. Keep me informed on major stuff. But day to day, that's your domain. Music to my ears. I spent the rest of the week getting oriented, meeting suppliers, understanding contracts, figuring out systems. Good work without constant interference. I didn't think about my old job at all, until Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. I answered. Hey, it's James from Reynolds Industrial. Is this a good time? James was the account manager for our biggest aluminum supplier. Reynolds provided about 40% of our raw materials. The contract was worth roughly $2 million annually. Hey, James, I said. What's up? I got a weird email from your company yesterday. Someone named Gerald, asking to renegotiate our contract terms. Wanted better pricing and shorter lead times. It was pretty aggressive. I almost laughed. I don't work there anymore. Resigned last week. There was a pause. You're serious? Yeah, I'm at a new company now. Damn, James said. I didn't know. Who's handling procurement? No idea. Gerald's the VP of operations. I guess he's managing it directly until they hire someone. Another pause. Well, that explains the tone. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. We've worked together for 4 years. You've always been fair, and you understand our constraints. This Gerald guy sent me an email demanding we cut prices by 15% and reduce lead times by a week. No discussion, just demands. That sounds like Gerald. Yeah, well, I told him we can't do that. Our margins are already tight. He responded saying if we can't meet his terms, he'll find another supplier. So I'm calling to give you a heads up that we're probably pulling out of that contract. I felt a cold spike of satisfaction. That's your call to make, James. For what it's worth, Reynolds has been a great partner. I appreciated working with you. Same here, he said. If you need a supplier at your new company, give me a ring. I'll take care of you. Will do. Thanks for the heads up. I hung up and sat there for a minute. Reynolds pulling out was a massive problem. Finding a replacement would take weeks, and getting pricing anywhere close to what we'd negotiated would be nearly impossible. Part of me felt bad for the people who'd have to deal with the fallout. But then I remembered Gerald's smirk, the way he'd told me I'd be replaced by Friday. I went back to work. Over the next 3 days, I got 7 more calls. Chris from Tri-State Plastics, our steel supplier, the packaging vendor, all of them with the same story. Gerald had sent aggressive emails demanding price cuts, threatening to replace them if they didn't comply. Every single one was walking away. I didn't lie to any of them, just told them the truth. I'd left, Gerald was handling procurement, and they should make whatever decision made sense for their business. Friday afternoon, Rachel called me. She sounded stressed. I need to ask you something off the record, she said. Okay. Did you do anything to sabotage the supplier relationships before you left? I kept my voice calm. No. I resigned, packed my desk, and left. Gerald chose to accept my resignation effective immediately, so I didn't even work my notice period. That's what I thought. I had to ask because Gerald is losing his mind. Apparently, every major supplier is either threatening to terminate or has already sent cancellation notices. He's claiming you must have poisoned them against the company. I didn't have to, I said. Gerald did that himself. What do you mean? He contacted every supplier demanding price cuts and better terms. Didn't ask, didn't negotiate. Just sent aggressive emails saying if they didn't comply, he'd replace them. Turns out, vendors don't respond well to being threatened. Rachel was quiet for a moment. He actually said that? According to multiple suppliers, yes. Jesus. How bad is it? I asked. Bad. Operations is freaking out because we don't have enough raw materials to meet production schedules next month. The CEO is furious. Legal is getting involved because some of these contracts have penalty clauses for early termination. It's a disaster. I felt a grim satisfaction settle in my chest. That's unfortunate. They're talking about trying to hire you back, offering more money, whatever you want. Not interested. I figured. Look, I'm sorry about how this went down. You deserved better. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that. She sighed. Good luck with the new job. You too. And Rachel? Start updating your resume. This company is going to be bleeding talent for a while. Already on it, she said, and hung up. I sat there thinking about Gerald, wondering if he understood yet what he'd done, whether he realized that replacing me wasn't the hard part. Replacing 6 years of relationship building and trust was impossible. The following week, I started getting LinkedIn messages. People from my old company reaching out, asking if my new employer was hiring, sharing stories about how chaotic things had gotten. Apparently, Gerald had tried to personally manage procurement while searching for my replacement. It went about as well as you'd expect. He didn't understand lead times, couldn't negotiate worth a damn, and burned every bridge I'd spent years building. Operations ground to a halt after 2 weeks. They couldn't get enough raw materials to maintain production schedules. Assembly lines sat idle. Deadlines were missed. Customers started canceling orders. The financial hit was staggering. Between lost revenue, penalty clauses, and emergency sourcing at inflated prices, the company was looking at losses in the millions. Gerald tried to blame me. Sent an email to the whole company saying I'd sabotaged the supplier relationships out of spite, that I'd violated my professional responsibilities. Linda, my new boss, forwarded it to me with a note. Want me to have our legal team send a cease and desist? I wrote back, not necessary. Truth is a defense, and I didn't do anything wrong. Let him dig his own grave. Sure enough, 2 days later, Rachel forwarded me another email. This one from the CEO to the entire staff. It was a masterclass in corporate damage control. The email acknowledged that there had been communication issues with suppliers following a management transition. It outlined steps the company was taking to rebuild relationships and stabilize operations. It thanked employees for their patience during a difficult period, and buried in the middle was a single line. Gerald Patterson is no longer with the company, effective immediately. I showed it to Linda. They actually fired him, she said. 6 months and he torched the place. Gerald was very good at burning bridges, just not much else. One of my former colleagues reached out a week later. We grabbed coffee and she filled me in on the fallout. The board had investigated. Turned out Gerald had inflated his resume. The company in Ohio hadn't just gone under after he left. It had failed partially because of his decisions as VP Poor Vendor Management. Same playbook he'd tried at our company. He'd also been cherry-picking data in his reports to make himself look good. The CEO had been making decisions based on incomplete information for months. Best part? Gerald tried to negotiate a severance package during his termination, threatened to sue. The lawyers pointed to the morality clause in his contract. Gross negligence voids severance. He walked away with nothing. 3 more people have left since you did, my colleague said. The company hired a crisis firm to rebuild supplier relationships, but it's not going well. They promoted Danielle to interim procurement manager. She's overwhelmed. I felt bad for Danielle. Good kid, impossible situation. Tell her she can call me if she needs advice, I said. Off the record. We finished our coffee and I headed back to my new office. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping aside and letting someone destroy themselves. 3 months later, I got an email from the CEO of my old company. It was carefully worded, professional, but the desperation leaked through anyway. He apologized for how my departure had been handled, acknowledged that the company had made serious mistakes in management, asked if there was any possibility I'd consider returning. The offer was generous. $110,000 base salary, profit sharing, a signing bonus to cover what I'd lost in unvested benefits, a guaranteed seat in management meetings. Basically everything I'd wanted before Gerald showed up. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Linda with a subject line, FYI, not taking this. She wrote back, good. We like having you here. I responded to the CEO politely, thanked him for the offer, explained that I was happy in my current role and not looking to make a change. Wished him and the company well. He wrote back within an hour, asked if I'd at least consider consulting, helping them rebuild the supplier relationships. He'd pay whatever my rate was. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I wrote back, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not available. However, I'd recommend reaching out to James at Reynolds Industrial and Chris at Tri-State Plastics. They're both professional and fair. If your new procurement manager approaches them with respect instead of demands, they might be willing to restart conversations. Good luck. I never heard back. Life moved on. I settled into my new role, built relationships with a new set of suppliers, implemented some of the ideas I'd never gotten to try at my old company, got a promotion after 8 months. My old company limped along. They eventually stabilized, but the damage was permanent. Revenue was down. Market share eroded. Several longtime customers had switched to competitors during the supply chain chaos and never came back. Last I heard, they were considering selling to a larger firm. The CEO who'd emailed me had retired early. The board had cleaned house, all because Gerald thought procurement wasn't rocket science. 3 months later, I got an email from the CEO of my old company. It was carefully worded, professional, but the desperation leaked through anyway. He apologized for how my departure had been handled, acknowledged that the company had made serious mistakes in management, asked if there was any possibility I'd consider returning. The offer was generous. $110,000 base salary, profit sharing, a signing bonus to cover what I'd lost in unvested benefits, a guaranteed seat in management meetings. Basically everything I'd wanted before Gerald showed up. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Linda with a subject line, FYI, not taking this. She wrote back, good. We like having you here. I responded to the CEO politely, thanked him for the offer, explained that I was happy in my current role and not looking to make a change, wished him and the company well. He wrote back within an hour, asked if I'd at least consider consulting, helping them rebuild the supplier relationships. He'd pay whatever my rate was. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I wrote back, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not available. However, I'd recommend reaching out to James at Reynolds Industrial and Chris at Tri-State Plastics. They're both professional and fair. If your new procurement manager approaches them with respect instead of demands, they might be willing to restart conversations. Good luck. I never heard back. 6 months after I left, Katie reached out. She'd taken my advice and applied to Linda's team, got hired as a buyer. We grabbed lunch her first week. It's so different here, she said. People actually communicate. Management listens. I forgot what it felt like to not be stressed all the time. What happened to Ben? I asked. He left 2 months after you did. Got a job in logistics at a distribution company. Better pay, better hours. And the old place? Katie shook her head. They hired someone to replace you eventually. Some guy from a consulting firm. He lasted 3 months before he quit. Then they hired someone else who's trying to rebuild everything from scratch. But the damage is done. Half the suppliers won't work with them anymore. The ones who stayed jacked up their prices because they know the company's desperate. What about operations? Revenue's down 30% from last year. They laid off about 60 people in manufacturing. The CEO announced his retirement last month. Word is they're shopping the company around, trying to find a buyer. I nodded. Wasn't surprising, but still sobering to hear. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. At Christmas, my mom handed my 7-year-old daughter an empty box and said, "We don't give gifts to a motherless child." Everyone laughed. I didn't. That night, I canceled their mortgage, froze their cards, and pulled back. $62,283 in transfers. Hey Reddit, I'm not usually the type to post, but after what went down last Christmas, I've been sitting on this story for months and figured maybe it's time to share it. Let's just say it involves an empty gift box, a messed up family, and a lesson I should have learned years ago about who really deserves your loyalty. I, 39 male, single dad, and I make good money running projects for a construction company. I've got a nice house, a paid-off truck, and a 7-year-old daughter named Lily, who's basically the best part of me. She's smart, funny, and has this way of asking questions that makes you feel stupid and proud at the same time. It's been just the two of us since her mom, Mia, passed 5 years ago. Car accident. I don't talk about it much. The day it happened, something in me kind of reset. I stopped caring about anything that wasn't her. Every decision I've made since then, work, home, life, it all circles back to Lily. She's my entire reason for existing. My family doesn't really get that. They say they do, but they don't. See, my parents aren't bad people on paper. They've just got this way of making everything about themselves. My mom's the type who thinks she's the glue holding everyone together, but really she's just holding the mirror. Everything she does, even family stuff, has to look a certain way. Polished, traditional, picture perfect. My dad mostly nods along to whatever she says. He's not mean, just one of those guys who thinks silence equals wisdom. Then there's my brother, Ashton. Golden boy since birth. Doesn't matter what he screws up. Mom calls it finding himself. He's 35. Job hops like it's a hobby. Still calls dad when his car needs repairs. I've lost count of how many temporary loans I've given him. And Hillary, my sister. The type who posts family is everything on Facebook while complaining about her husband behind his back. She's married with 2 kids and a weird superiority complex because her husband sells insurance and wears loafers. I've always been the reliable one. The Henry will handle it guy. Mortgage short? Call Henry. Need to co-sign a car? Henry's got good credit. Power about to get cut off? Henry'll pay it, and we'll pay you back next week. Spoiler, they never do. I used to tell myself it didn't matter. I make good money, and I don't mind helping family. That's what I believed, until recently. The truth is, my family never really liked my wife. They weren't cruel about it, not openly. It was more like a constant drizzle of judgment. Little comments at dinners like, "She's very quiet, isn't she?" Or, "You've really changed since you met her." They said it with smiles, but I always caught the undertone. Like Mia was too calm for them, too put together. Still, we kept the peace. She'd bake something for family gatherings, sit politely through Hillary's bragging, nod along to Mom's suggestions. She always tried. I think that's what hurt the most. She tried so hard to be liked. When she died, I thought maybe that would change things, that they'd realize how much she meant to me. Instead, it just made things weird. My mom kept saying, "At least you have Lily? She's your piece of Mia." Like she was talking about a souvenir, not a person. I didn't argue. I never do. I just worked harder, spent more time with Lily, and let them stay in the background. Then, last week, Mom called. She said she was hosting Christmas this year, like always, and wanted me and Lily to come. Her exact words were, "It's been too long, and Lily should be around family. She needs that." Part of me wanted to say no. I hate those gatherings. They're loud, fake, full of forced hugs and bragging contests. But Lily overheard me on the phone, and her face lit up like it was Christmas already. She started asking if she'd see her cousins, if Grandma would like the card she made, if Santa would come there too. So I said yes. Because try saying no to a 7-year-old who's missing the kind of Christmas memories you can't give alone. The next few days were chaos. Work deadlines, traffic, trying to find gifts that didn't feel like generic dad presents. But Lily was in her element. She picked out a sparkly red dress, wrapped her own little gift for Grandma, a hand-drawn picture of the family, including Mia, which I didn't have, the heart to tell her might get awkward, and kept humming Christmas songs around the house. She even asked if she could bake cookies like her mom used to. I helped her, even though I suck at baking. We burned the first batch, laughed about it, and she said, "Mom would have saved the middle ones." That one hit hard. I remember looking at her that night and thinking, maybe it won't be so bad this year. Maybe they'll surprise me. I should have known better. My family has this way of pretending they're normal, just long enough for you to let your guard down. Then they remind you exactly who they are. The morning of Christmas Eve, Mom sent a text in her usual tone. "Don't be late. Family starts at 2. Dress nice." Not, "Can't wait to see you." Not, "Lily must be excited." Just, "Dress nice." That was my first red flag. Still, I told myself it was fine. I put on a suit, made sure Lily looked perfect in her red dress, and we drove over. She was buzzing with excitement the whole ride, asking if Grandma's tree was bigger than ours, if her cousins would like her drawings, if Grandma would smile when she opened the card. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. My mom doesn't do smiling unless someone's watching. I didn't know it then, but that was the day everything changed. That was the day my family showed me exactly what kind of people they really were. The moment I stepped through that front door, I could tell everything was for show. My mom greeted us with her usual stiff smile, more like a job interview than a hello. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said, giving Lily a once-over like she was inspecting an outfit instead of greeting her granddaughter. Lily held out her little envelope with a handmade card inside. "Merry Christmas, Grandma." Mom took it, glanced at it like it was a receipt, and said, "How thoughtful," before setting it on the counter without opening it. My dad gave me a half hug, patted my back twice, and disappeared toward the living room where football was on. Lily stayed close to me, smiling shyly. She didn't complain, didn't fidget, just tried to fit in. "Look at her," Mom said after a while, loud enough for everyone to hear. So quiet, just like her mother. That tone, light, sweet, but somehow sharp enough to cut. I felt it. Lily didn't understand the dig, thankfully. She just smiled politely and nodded like she thought it was a compliment. The gift opening started after dinner. Everyone gathered in the living room. Hillary's kids went first. New toys, matching scooters, each gift bigger than the last. Everyone clapped and laughed and took pictures. Then silence. Mom clapped her hands. "Now, before we finish, we've got something special for our little Lily." Lily's eyes lit up. She straightened her back and brushed down her dress. I smiled at her, trying to stay relaxed. Mom and Hillary dragged out a huge shiny red box from under the tree. It was almost as tall as Lily. The whole room watched as they set it in front of her. Even Dad turned down the TV. Lily looked up at me like she was asking for permission. I nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Lily tore into the wrapping paper, giggling as the shreds fell around her. When she got to the box, she opened the lid and froze. It was empty. The room went weirdly quiet for a second. Then Hillary laughed. A short, nervous sound. "Oh, Mom," she said, trying to play it off. My dad shifted in his chair. "Margaret," he said quietly, like even he knew she'd gone too far. But Mom smiled, that same tight-lipped smile she always wore when she thought she was teaching someone a lesson. "We don't give gifts to a motherless child," she said, matter-of-factly. "It's bad luck." Everything in me went still. Lily blinked. Her lips trembled. "What?" Mom shrugged. "It's just how it is. Don't take it personal, sweetie." Then Mom looked down at Lily, still crying quietly, and said in that calm voice that always made my skin crawl, "You even look like your mother when you cry." That was it. Something inside me snapped clean in half. "You think that's funny?" I said, my voice low. Nobody answered. "You think humiliating a 7-year-old is something to laugh at?" "Henry," my dad started, holding up a hand like I was a child about to interrupt. "No," I cut him off. "Not this time." I stood up. Every word that came out of my mouth was shaking but sharp. "You people talk about family like it means something, but the truth is, you wouldn't know love if it punched you in the face. You hated Mia because she didn't worship you, and now you're punishing her daughter for existing." Mom's smile faltered. "Don't be dramatic." I laughed, but it wasn't nice. "Dramatic? You just told a child her dead mother makes her bad luck. You're disgusting." Ashton stood, trying to play mediator. "Bro, relax. She didn't mean it like that." "Then how did she mean it?" I turned on him. "You sit there, letting her say that garbage, pretending you're better than me while I've been bailing you out for years. You think I don't notice you playing broke while you buy new rims?" Ashton opened his mouth, then shut it again. Hillary crossed her arms. "You're overreacting." Mom was joking. Joking? I looked down at Lily, her little hands gripping her empty box, her face red and wet. "If that's your idea of a joke, you all need serious help." "Henry, please," Dad said. "Don't make a scene." I stepped closer to him. "A scene? You want to see a scene? Watch me walk out that door and never come back. That's the only scene you're getting." I crouched down next to Lily, wiped her tears, and said quietly, "We're leaving, baby. You don't need people like this." She nodded, sniffling, still clutching the stupid box. As I carried her toward the door, Mom called out, "Oh, stop it, Henry! You're embarrassing yourself." I turned around and looked straight at her. "No, Mom. You did that for me a long time ago." And then I walked out. Lily buried her face in my shoulder. I could feel her shaking. I kept walking until we reached the truck, set her in the seat, and buckled her in. She finally spoke, her voice small. "Daddy, why did Grandma say that? Did I do something bad?" I swallowed the anger clawing up my throat. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Some people just mistake cruelty for strength." She didn't answer, just stared out the window as I started the truck. Driving away, I looked in the mirror and saw the house glowing behind us. Bright lights, laughter, fake warmth. I realized it had never been home. Not even close. That was the last time we ever set foot in that house. And it was the first night I started planning how to make sure they'd never have the power to hurt us again. When we got home, the first thing Lily did was go straight to her room. She didn't say a word, just crawled into bed. Her little shoulders shook every few seconds. I stayed there for a long time, just staring at the ceiling. I'd been through plenty of crap from them over the years, but this one hit different. It wasn't about me this time. It was about Lily. That was the part that broke something in me. The more I thought about it, the more pieces started clicking together. All those subtle digs about Mia over the years. Mom's innocent comments like, she never really tried to fit in, or you've changed since she came around. Dad agreeing with that blank look like he didn't even have his own thoughts. At the time, I used to think they just didn't understand her. But now, sitting there, it was obvious. They never wanted to. They resented her because she didn't play the same games they did. Mia didn't gossip. She didn't brag. She just quietly built a life with me and didn't need them. That's what bothered them. And now they were doing the same thing to Lily because she looks like her mom. By 2 a.m., I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to yell, argue, or explain myself ever again. I was done paying for their mistakes, done trying to earn their approval. No more guilt, no more money, no more pretending. I opened my laptop and started digging through my records. I've always kept everything organized. Years of bank statements, transfer receipts, loan confirmations. I started clicking through folders one by one. $500 to Ashton for car repairs. $2,000 to Mom for medical bills. $1,400 mortgage payment labeled temporary help. The list went on. I added it up, then added it again because I didn't believe the number. $45,000 I'd quietly poured into them over the years. And for what? So they could humiliate my daughter? So my mom could tell people she raised a good man while treating me like an ATM? They were going to learn what it's like to live without me holding everything together. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I ignore those, but I answered out of habit. Henry? It was my cousin Melissa. She sounded hesitant. Hey, just giving you a heads up. Your mom's been talking. I already knew this was going to be good. Talking about what? She's been telling everyone you screamed at her that you ruined Christmas. Said you scared the kids and that Lily threw a tantrum. I actually laughed. A short, humorless sound. Of course she did. Melissa sighed. You know how she gets. But just so you know, she's spinning it like you've changed since Mia died. That you've become bitter and ungrateful. She told Aunt Carol you embarrassed the family in front of the neighbors. I rubbed my temples. So I defend my daughter and somehow I'm the villain? Yeah, Melissa said quietly. You know how they are. Just thought you should hear it from me first. That phone call sealed it. It wasn't just about money anymore. They were actively trying to ruin my reputation, like they always did when they couldn't control me. This time, though, it wasn't going to work. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there for a bit. The anger didn't even rise this time. It just flattened out. They weren't toxic in private anymore. Now they were trying to spread it like a virus. I opened my laptop again. This wasn't just about cutting them off now. This was about protecting myself and Lily. I started taking screenshots of every payment I'd ever made for them. Every loan agreement. Every text that said, I'll pay you back. Every email where Mom thanked me for saving us again. It wasn't about revenge. It was about evidence. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. As I worked, I thought back to something Mia once said to me. It was right after we bought our first house together. We'd been arguing with my mom about the down payment because she thought it was unfair. I didn't buy near their neighborhood. Mia had told me, some people don't want to see you free, Henry. They want to see you useful. I didn't get it then. I do now. By the time the sun came up, I had a folder labeled proof sitting on my desktop. Every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence that showed how much I'd given and how little I'd gotten back. The gossip didn't matter. The lies didn't matter. What mattered was cutting the cord once and for all. And I knew exactly how I was going to do it. That morning, I opened my banking app and started the process. Every account, every connection, every autopay. They wanted to talk about family loyalty? Fine. They were about to find out what loyalty looks like when you've drained it dry. The next morning, I woke up early. It wasn't one of those restless, angry mornings either. I felt rested, sharp, clear, like I'd finally sobered up from a 15-year-long family hangover. Lily was still asleep, drooling on her stuffed rabbit, so I made coffee and opened my laptop. I wasn't doing this in a rush. This was going to be surgical. 2 full days of quiet precision. First target, the mortgage. 6 years ago, my parents couldn't qualify for refinancing because Dad's credit was in the dumpster. They'd called crying, saying they'd lose the house. So I co-signed. Just for a few months, Mom had said. You're our safety net. Safety net turned into me quietly making payments whenever they forgot. I logged into the lender portal. The balance popped up. $167,000 remaining. My name was listed second. I clicked through the payment history. My bank account name showed up on more lines than theirs. That was enough evidence for me. Turns out they were already 3 months behind before I even stopped paying. My deposits had just been covering up the late fees. I deleted my card from their payment system and sent the lender an email saying I wouldn't be covering their payments anymore. If they wanted me off the loan, they'd have to refinance it in their own names. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I attached proof of the payments I'd made and asked them to remove me as an authorized payer on the account. If they wanted me off the note, they could refinance. I hit send. One connection severed. Next up, utilities. 4 years ago, their power nearly got cut off. My mom had called crying again, saying she couldn't let her grandkids freeze. I'd set up autopay without her even asking. It cost me $160 a month, every month since. I logged into the electric and water company accounts, found my name buried under authorized payer, and canceled both. The confirmation emails came instantly. I took screenshots and saved them in a folder called Proof. It was strangely satisfying, like unclogging a drain you didn't realize had been blocked for years. Then came the credit cards. I'd added mom and dad as authorized users on 2 of my cards years ago for emergencies. I remember the day I did it. Mom crying, saying she just needed one for groceries. Groceries turned into online shopping sprees, restaurants. I scrolled through 6 years of statements, line by line. Each one made my chest tighten less and less. I took their names off my cards, froze both accounts, and ate the old balances. Lesson learned. Still, I sent them a neat little spreadsheet showing every dime they'd run up. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Definitely. I requested new card numbers for myself so they couldn't sneak back in. Another line cut. Then came Ashton's car loan. 2 years ago, he'd shown up at my house saying, "Bro, I just need a cosigner." I'm starting fresh. You'll see. He made 3 payments total before it became my problem. I told the lender I wouldn't be covering Ashton's missed payments anymore. They basically said, "That's between you and him. Fine by me." A few months later, the car got repoed in front of his apartment. My credit took a small hit, but watching that tow truck drive off, worth every point. After that, there wasn't anything to handle. Just let the repo and late marks land. By the afternoon, my desktop looked like a war room. Screenshots, emails, PDFs, all neatly labeled. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I just felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval or forgiveness. I was finally making decisions for me and for Lily. I pulled up my bank app, opened a new savings account, and labeled it Lily's Future. Every dollar that used to vanish into their bills was going there now. I set up an automatic transfer for the first of every month. It wasn't much to start, $1,200, but it felt good knowing where it was going this time. After 2 days, I had receipts for everything. Mortgage, cut. Utilities, cut. Credit cards, cut. Car loan, cut. Each step brought a kind of calm I didn't know I needed. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the living room. For years, I'd been surrounded by quiet guilt. Photos of family trips I paid for, gifts I bought, obligations I never asked for. I started packing them away, not out of hate, but because I didn't need reminders of people who only loved me when my wallet was open. As I boxed them up, I thought about all the times I'd ignored my gut, like when Mom accidentally left Mia out of the family portrait, or when Ashton called Mia too fancy because she had a degree, or when Hillary told me, "You got lucky she settled for you." At the time, I'd laughed it off, told Mia, "They don't mean it." But now I realized they always meant it. They just never expected me to notice. When school started back up in January, I made her favorite pasta and listened while she talked about her new art project. She smiled again for the first time since Christmas. That little smile was all the proof I needed that I was doing the right thing. After she went to bed, I sat at my desk and double-checked everything. My proof folder was complete. I backed it up to a flash drive in the cloud. If they tried to twist the story again, I'd be ready. Around midnight, I got an email notification from the mortgage lender. "We've noted your request to stop voluntary payments. Cosigner removal requires refinance or assumption. Account remains delinquent." Delinquency. That word made me grin. For years, I'd been the reason they stayed afloat. Without me, the cracks were already showing. I felt like a man finally protecting his own family. The only one that mattered. Mia used to tell me, "You can't save people who drown on purpose." I finally understood what she meant. They'd spent years pulling me under. And now, I'd finally learned how to swim without them. 3 days passed before the storm hit. I knew it was coming. The silence was too loud. No calls, no texts, no guilt trips from Mom. It was the kind of quiet that meant something ugly was brewing. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was making grilled cheese for Lily when someone started pounding on the door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind that rattles the hinges. Lily looked up from her drawing. "Daddy, someone's mad." She wasn't wrong. I peeked through the peephole. Mom, Dad, Ashton. All three of them standing on the porch like a knockoff mob family. Mom's face was as red as ornament. Dad's jaw clenched. And Ashton, well, he looked like he'd just gotten evicted from his own ego. I opened the door halfway, keeping the chain lock on. "What?" Mom jumped right in. "The mortgage company called us. They said the payment didn't go through, and the utilities got disconnected this morning." "What did you do?" I leaned against the doorframe, calm as ever. "I stopped paying for people who think humiliating my daughter is okay." Her mouth dropped open like she couldn't believe I said it. "You can't just— Henry, that's not how family works." I raised an eyebrow. "Funny. I thought family didn't humiliate 7-year-olds at Christmas." Ashton scoffed behind her. "Oh, come on, man. You're still stuck on that?" "It was a joke." I smirked. "A joke? You call an empty gift box and a motherless child speech a joke? Maybe next year you'll light a tree on fire for laughs?" Mom threw her hands up. "You're being ridiculous." "I told you, it was taken out of context." "Out of context?" I cut her off. "You looked my daughter in the eye and told her she didn't deserve a gift because her mom died. What context makes that okay?" Dad finally spoke, his voice booming like he still thought he had authority. "That's enough, Henry. You're crossing a line." I laughed. "The only line I crossed was the one I drew between my family and your chaos." Ashton stepped forward, puffing up his chest. "You think you're better than us now, huh? Just because you make good money?" I didn't move. "No, Ashton. I think I'm smarter for not wasting mine on people who treat me like a wallet with legs." Mom's eyes narrowed. "We're still your parents." "Then start acting like it," I said flatly. "Parents don't leech off their kids. They don't tear down their grandkids for sport." Dad jabbed a finger at me. "You're going to regret this, boy. You think you can just walk away from your family?" I gave a small laugh. "You can't walk away from something that was never there." That shut him up for a second. Mom's voice cracked like she was switching tactics. "Henry, please. You know we're not perfect, but we need help right now. The house," I interrupted, "was my safety net, remember? You begged me to co-sign. I covered your missed payments. I saved your credit. And now that I stopped, you want to call me selfish? You're destroying us," she shouted. "No," I said, calm as ever. "I just stopped holding you up." Ashton stepped closer, trying to stare me down. "You really think you can live your life without family? Who's going to be there for you when things fall apart?" I tilted my head. "You mean like I've been there for all of you?" Newsflash. I already did the whole carrying the family thing. Didn't work out great for me. Mom's face twisted into something between anger and disgust. "You've changed, Henry." "Yeah," I said, smiling a little. That was the point. For a second, nobody said anything. Just the sound of my fridge humming in the background and Lily's pencil scratching at her drawing in the next room. Then Dad snapped, "You're not welcome in this family anymore." I grinned. "You can't cut off someone who doesn't need you." That hit harder than anything I'd said before. Dad's face went red. Mom gasped like I'd cursed in church, and Ashton muttered something I didn't catch. I started to close the door. "You guys should probably go pay those bills before it gets dark. It's cold out there." Mom tried one last shot. "Lily will grow up thinking her father turned his back on his own parents." I stopped halfway through shutting the door and looked her dead in the eye. "No, she'll grow up knowing her father protected her from people who confuse cruelty with tradition." Then I closed the door. Slowly, firmly, locked it. Their muffled voices echoed through the porch. Shouting, blaming, calling my name. But I didn't move. After a while, I heard footsteps fading down the driveway. Silence returned like a blessing. I walked back into the kitchen. Lily was sitting at the table, coloring a picture of a house with a big sun and 2 stick figures holding hands. Me and her. No one else. She looked up. "Who was that?" "Just some people who forgot how to knock politely," I said with a small smile. She giggled, satisfied with that answer, and went back to coloring. We spent the rest of the night like that. Drawing, talking, laughing a little. It felt normal, peaceful. My phone lit up on the counter. 5 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I deleted them without listening. And for the first time, I was finally protecting the right people. I knew it was only a matter of time before their world started falling apart. When it started with a notice in my inbox from the mortgage lender. Pre-foreclosure proceedings initiated. I wasn't supposed to get that email anymore, but my name was still tied to the account, so copies came my way. I stared at it for a second, then deleted it. Their problem now. Then came the chain reaction. Utilities shut off. Mom's credit cards declined at the grocery store. Ashton's car repossessed in broad daylight, from what a cousin told me. Hillary's husband, who's always acted like he's too classy for drama, finally cracked when my parents showed up asking to stay for a week. That week turned into a month, and by the second week, Hillary's husband had packed a bag and went to his brother's house. Word spread that Hillary was losing her mind, trying to juggle her kids, her freeloading parents, and Ashton sleeping on the couch playing video games all day. Meanwhile, I was fine. Better than fine. I'd stopped checking their calls after the first few days. My voicemail was full of Mom's guilt-ridden messages. "Henry, you can't do this to your family. Your father is sick with stress. You're turning Lily against us." That last one made me laugh. The woman who told my daughter she didn't deserve a gift because her mother died was now claiming I was teaching her to hate them. Yeah, sure. But the real kicker came when Melissa, my cousin, called me again. She started with, "Hey, just a heads up again. Your mom's been making the rounds." I sighed. "What's she saying this time?" "She's telling everyone you're brainwashing Lily," Melissa said. "That you're making her think the family's evil, that you're isolating her." I rubbed my face, trying not to laugh. Right. Because needing therapy after your grandma humiliated you at Christmas is definitely brainwashing. Melissa lowered her voice. "Look, people were believing her at first. You know how she is. She can cry on command." But then I told them what really happened. I leaned back in my chair, stunned for a second. "Melissa, that must have caused a war." "Oh, it did," she said, half laughing. "Your mom lost it. Aunt Carol called me a liar, but I told her to go ask Hillary's kids. They saw it too." After that, the sympathy kind of died out. That was the first time in years I actually smiled about a family conversation. "Thanks, Mel. You didn't have to do that." The fallout spread faster than I expected. Within a month, Mom's friends stopped defending her. People started whispering. Hillary stopped posting family-first photos on Facebook. Ashton was seen taking the bus to his job at a tire shop, which, ironically, he quit a week later. Meanwhile, Lily was doing better. She started smiling again, sleeping through the night, drawing pictures that didn't make my chest ache anymore. One evening, a letter showed up at my door. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Mom's. I almost tossed it without reading, but curiosity won. It started just how I expected. "We only ever wanted what was best for you." Then came the guilt. "You've changed since Mia passed. You used to be kind." Then the manipulation. "Lily needs her grandparents. You're ruining her childhood." And at the very end, the line that made me laugh out loud, "If your wife were here, she'd be disappointed in you." I crumpled the letter and threw it straight in the trash. That's when it hit me. They'd never stop trying to control the narrative. Even when faced with their own destruction, they couldn't see the truth. To them, I wasn't a son or brother. I was a resource that ran out. By late spring, the foreclosure finally went through. Honestly, it happened faster than I expected. But looking back, they were already circling the drain before I cut the cord. They lost the house. Ashton moved in with a buddy. Hillary stayed married but barely, and my parents ended up in a small rental outside town. I didn't hear from them again for months. Melissa texted me once after that. "They're still blaming you for everything, but everyone else knows the truth now." I told her, "Good. Let them talk. I'm done listening." And I meant it. Because the funny thing about peace is, it's quiet. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's just steady. I'd spent most of my life mistaking chaos for love and silence for loneliness. Turns out, silence is peace when it's the right kind. Months went by after everything blew up. Spring came, then summer. Life got simple again. Work, school, home. No guilt, no surprise calls, no fake apologies. Just quiet. Peaceful, steady, quiet. Lily was thriving. Her teacher sent a note saying she was drawing more, laughing more. She even joined the art club. Every time she brought home a messy paint project, I taped it to the fridge like it was the Mona Lisa. And me? I felt lighter. I didn't realize how much mental space my family had taken up until they were gone. My phone didn't buzz at odd hours. My weekends didn't revolve around someone else's emergency. I finally had time to breathe. A few weeks later, when Melissa called me, she sounded half amused, half exasperated. "Your mom's still at it," she said. "Telling people you're living some lonely, sad life." I laughed. "Yeah? Tell her my lonely life includes pancakes, Saturday cartoons, and a daughter who doesn't cry herself to sleep anymore." Melissa chuckled. "You know what's funny? Nobody's buying her act now. Everyone's seen the truth. Hillary barely talks to her. Ashton's broke again. and your parents had to move into some small rental after the foreclosure. That didn't make me happy exactly. It just made sense. You can't build your life on lies and expect it to stand. Let them do what they do, I said finally. I stopped playing referee. And that was the end of that conversation. The months rolled by, and before I knew it, Christmas was around the corner again. The anniversary of the night everything broke. Only this time, there were no invitations, no phone calls, no fake gestures. Just quiet. Christmas morning came, and for the first time in years, I didn't wake up with that heavy pit in my chest. No pressure to perform, no fake family act waiting. Just me and Lily, the smell of pancakes, and some cheesy holiday music playing on the TV. She came running into the living room wearing her Santa pajamas, hair sticking out in every direction. "Daddy! It snowed!" she yelled, pointing out the window. We both stood there watching the snowfall. For a second, it felt like the universe was giving us a clean slate. After breakfast, Lily crawled onto the couch next to me, sipping hot chocolate. Her voice was small when she asked, "Are we going to Grandma's this year?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. We're doing our own thing this year." She thought about it for a second, then smiled. "Good. I like it when it's just us." That line hit deeper than anything my mom ever said. I put an arm around her and said, "Me too, kiddo. Me too." We spent the day watching cartoons, building a blanket fort, and eating way too many cookies. No yelling, no judgment, no guilt. Just laughter and calm. At one point, Lily looked up at me with a mouthful of frosting and said, "Mom would like our tree." I smiled. "Yeah, baby." She would not. That was the moment it all came full circle for me. I didn't need a family who tore me down to feel loved. I already had one who looked up to me for protection, for comfort, for peace. The old version of me would have spent Christmas wondering what my parents were doing, if they were okay, if I'd done the right thing. But the new me? I didn't wonder anymore. I knew. Because sitting there with Lily, her head resting on my shoulder, the house warm and quiet, I realized something I'd never felt before. We weren't missing anything. We were finally whole. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. They told everyone I was a college dropout loser, while my brother was the successful doctor. But years later, I built a thriving business, and now my brother is drowning in debt while they're all begging me to help him. Hey Reddit, I need to get this off my chest because the past few months have been absolutely insane. I'm 32 male, and I have an older brother Jake who's 35. Growing up, our family dynamics were completely messed up, and it's all coming back to bite them in the ass now. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood. Jake was always the golden boy. Perfect grades, perfect behavior, perfect everything. He was valedictorian in high school, got into Harvard pre-med, and basically walked on water according to my parents. Me? I was the family disappointment from day one. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bad kid. I got decent grades, played guitar in a band, and was really into computers and technology. But compared to Jake's academic achievements, I might as well have been selling drugs on street corners, according to my parents. Every dinner conversation went something like this. Mom, Jake got another A+ on his organic chemistry exam. The professor said he's never seen such natural talent. Dad, that's my boy. What about you, Danny? How did that history test go? Me, I got a B+. Dad, B+? Why not an A? Your brother would have gotten an A. This happened constantly. Jake got a scholarship to Harvard. They threw a party and invited the whole neighborhood. I made the honor roll. That's nice, honey. Can you help me with the dishes? The worst part was that Jake ate it up. He developed this superiority complex where he genuinely believed he was better than me. He'd make comments like, well, not everyone can be intellectually gifted, or some people are just meant for different paths in life. The condescending tone made my blood boil. When it came time for college, I applied to several good schools and got into a decent state university for computer science. I was actually excited about it. I'd been coding since I was 12 and had this vision of maybe starting a tech company someday. But college didn't go as planned. My freshman year was rough. I was dealing with undiagnosed anxiety and depression, probably stemming from years of being told I wasn't good enough. My grades suffered. I started skipping classes. By the end of sophomore year, I was on academic probation. Meanwhile, Jake was absolutely crushing it at Harvard. Dean's List every semester, research positions, the works. Every family gathering became a Jake appreciation festival. The breaking point came during my junior year. I was struggling with my mental health, barely keeping up with coursework, and feeling completely lost. I made the decision to take a semester off to get my head together and figure out what I really wanted to do. When I told my parents, you'd think I'd announced I was joining a cult. Dad, you're dropping out? Are you out of your mind? Mom, what are we going to tell people? Your brother is about to graduate Harvard with honors and you're… What? Giving up? Me. It's not giving up. It's taking time to figure things out. I'm not handling the pressure well right now. Dad, pressure? You don't know what pressure is. Jake manages to handle Harvard just fine. That conversation broke something in me. They weren't concerned about my mental health or well-being. They were worried about what the neighbors would think. I ended up taking that semester off, which turned into a year, which eventually became permanent. I never went back to finish my degree. Instead, I got a job at a local computer repair shop to pay rent and started teaching myself web development in my spare time. This is where things get really ugly. Instead of being supportive or even just keeping quiet about my situation, my parents decided to wage a public campaign about what a disappointment I was. At family gatherings, Jake's accomplishments were announced like he'd just won the Nobel Prize, while I was either ignored completely or mentioned with phrases like, well, Danny's figuring things out with this pained expression. But it got worse. My parents started actively telling people I was a college dropout who was wasting his potential. I found out from my cousin that at her wedding, my aunt asked about me, and my mom literally said, "Oh, Danny? He dropped out of college. We don't know what happened to him. Some kids just can't handle the pressure like Jake can." Jake graduated Harvard Medical School and got into a prestigious residency program. The family threw him a massive party. They invited probably 200 people. There were speeches about how proud they were, how Jake was going to save lives, how he was everything they could hope for in a son. I wasn't even invited to speak at the party. I was basically treated like hired help, clearing plates and staying in the background while everyone celebrated the successful son. The narrative they created was crystal clear. Jake was the doctor who was going to make something of himself, and I was the dropout loser who couldn't even finish college. For a couple years after that, I was pretty much rock bottom emotionally. I was working at the computer repair shop making $12 an hour, living in a crappy studio apartment, and genuinely starting to believe maybe my family was right about me being a failure. The computer repair shop was owned by this old guy named Frank who was actually really cool. He noticed I had skills beyond just fixing hardware and started letting me handle their basic web development projects. Local businesses needed websites, and I was good at it. One day, Frank pulled me aside and said something that changed everything. "Danny, you're too talented to be working for someone else. You should start your own business." The idea terrified me, but I'd hit such a low point that I figured I had nothing left to lose. I used my savings, all $3,000 of it, to buy a better computer and started freelancing web development on the side. My first client was a local restaurant that needed a website. I charged them $500 and spent probably 80 hours on it because I wanted it to be perfect. They loved it and recommended me to their friends. Slowly, very slowly, I started building a client base. Small businesses, local nonprofits, a few larger companies. I was working 16-hour days between the repair shop and my freelance work, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually good at something. After about a year of freelancing, I had enough clients that I could quit the repair shop and do web development full-time. Frank was sad to see me go, but proud that I was taking the leap. The first few months of full-time freelancing were scary as hell. Some months I barely made rent, but I was learning, growing, and most importantly, I was passionate about what I was doing, in a way I never was about college coursework. I started expanding beyond just websites. I learned about digital marketing, SEO, social media management, basically anything small businesses needed to succeed online. I wasn't just building websites anymore, I was helping businesses grow. My first big break came when I landed a contract with a regional restaurant chain. They needed a complete overhaul of their online presence. New website, social media strategy, online ordering system, the works. It was a $15,000 project, more money than I'd ever made on a single job. I knocked it out of the park. Their online orders increased by 300% in the first 3 months after launch. They were so happy they recommended me to other restaurant groups, and suddenly I had more work than I could handle. That's when I decided to officially start a company. Digital Solutions. Not the most creative name, but it worked. I registered as an LLC, got a business license, rented a small office space, and started thinking bigger. Within 2 years, Digital Solutions went from just me working out of my apartment to a team of 8 employees. We weren't just doing websites anymore. We were providing complete digital transformation services for small and medium businesses. The key was that I actually understood what these businesses needed. I wasn't some big corporate consulting firm that charged $300 an hour to give generic advice. I was a guy who'd worked in the trenches, who understood what it was like to struggle, and who genuinely wanted to help other people succeed. We developed this reputation for being the company that could take a struggling local business and help them compete online against the big corporations. Word spread fast in the business community. By year 3, we were doing over $2 million in annual revenue. I hired a business manager, a sales team, and specialized developers for different platforms. We moved to a bigger office downtown. The crazy part is, my family had no idea any of this was happening. I'd gone low contact with them years earlier because every interaction was just them comparing me unfavorably to Jake or expressing disappointment about my life choices. I moved across town, changed my phone number, and basically disappeared from their radar. As far as they knew, I was still the college dropout working at a computer repair shop. They never asked, so I never told them. While I was building my business, Jake was having his own journey through the medical world. He finished his residency and got a position at a prestigious hospital. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but I started hearing things through the family grapevine. Apparently, being a doctor wasn't quite the gold mine everyone thought it would be. Jake had massive student loans, over $300,000 from undergrad and medical school. His residency barely paid anything, and even as an attending physician, the loan payments were crushing him. More problematically, Jake had developed some expensive tastes during his time as the family golden boy. He bought a house he couldn't really afford, a BMW, expensive clothes, frequent vacations. He was living like he was making big money before he actually was. He also got married to another doctor, Sarah, who had her own set of loans and expensive preferences. They had a wedding that cost more than most people's annual salary. I heard from my cousin that Jake was actually struggling financially, despite having this prestigious job everyone was so impressed by. Turns out, lots of doctors are house poor and dealing with debt well into their 30s and 40s. But my parents still talked about him like he was Warren Buffett. Jake's doing so well at the hospital. Jake and Sarah bought such a beautiful house. They had no idea he was financing this lifestyle with credit cards and home equity loans. Then COVID hit, and everything changed. For Jake's hospital, it meant budget cuts, reduced elective procedures, and actually pay cuts for the physicians. Jake went from making $200,000 to making $150,000 basically overnight, while all his expenses stayed the same. For my business, it was initially terrifying, but ultimately transformative. Suddenly, every business in the world needed to figure out how to operate online. Restaurants needed delivery platforms. Retail stores needed e-commerce sites. Service businesses needed virtual consultation tools. We were uniquely positioned to help with all of this. While other businesses were struggling, we were hiring more staff to keep up with demand. 2020 ended up being our best year ever. We did $4.5 million in revenue. I bought a house, not some massive McMansion, but a nice place in a good neighborhood that I could actually afford. I drove a reliable Toyota, saved money, and reinvested profits back into the business. The universe has a funny way of forcing confrontations, and mine came at my cousin's wedding in late 2021. It was the first family event I'd attended in probably 3 years. I almost didn't go, but I'd always been close with this cousin, and didn't want to miss her big day. I figured I could fly under the radar, congratulate her, and leave early. That plan lasted about 20 minutes. I was at the bar getting a drink when I heard my mom's voice behind me. "Oh, that's my younger son, Danny. He's had some struggles. Dropped out of college, you know. Been working at some computer repair shop for years now. We keep hoping he'll get his life together like his brother Jake." I turned around and saw she was talking to some family friends I didn't recognize. The look of pity on their faces made my blood boil. "Actually, Mom," I said, stepping into the conversation, "I haven't worked at a repair shop in over 4 years." She looked startled to see me. "Oh, Danny! I didn't see you there." "Well, what are you doing now?" "I run a digital marketing company. We did about $4.5 million in revenue last year." The silence was deafening. My mom's friends looked confused, like they couldn't reconcile this information with what they'd just been told. "Don't exaggerate, Danny," my mom said with that familiar dismissive tone. "It's nice that you have a little business, but it's not a little business, Mom. I have 12 employees, an office downtown, and we're expanding into 3 new markets this year." That's when Jake appeared, drink in hand, with that same condescending smile I remembered from childhood. "Danny, good to see you, little brother. Mom was just telling everyone about your computer fixing job. That's nice that you're keeping busy." I looked at him, really looked at him. He looked tired, stressed. His suit was nice, but I could tell it wasn't new. He'd gained weight and had bags under his eyes. I don't fix computers anymore, Jake. Haven't for years. I run a successful business. He laughed. Come on, Danny. You don't need to embellish. We're family. That's when something snapped in me. 4 years of building something from nothing, of proving myself, of success that my family refused to acknowledge because it didn't fit their narrative. You want specifics, Jake? Last month, my company had $400,000 in revenue. This year, I'm projecting to clear about $800,000 in personal income after taxes. I own my house outright, no mortgage. My business has 0 debt and 6 months of operating expenses in the bank. How are your student loans going? Jake's face went white. The people around us had gone quiet. I heard you're still paying off med school. What's that monthly payment again? 3 grand? 4? Must be tough with the hospital budget cuts. You don't know what you're talking about, Jake said, but his voice lacked confidence. Don't I? Sarah told my cousin that you guys had to refinance the house to consolidate some credit card debt. Something about lifestyle expenses getting out of control? Now my parents were both staring at me like I'd grown a second head. The idea that their dropout son might be more financially successful than their doctor son was breaking their brains. This is inappropriate, my mother said. Jake is a doctor. He saves lives. He's successful. He's broke, Mom. Being a doctor doesn't automatically make you wealthy, especially when you're financing a lifestyle you can't afford. The rest of the wedding was awkward as hell. Word spread quickly through the family that the dropout son was apparently running some kind of successful business, while the successful doctor son was struggling with debt. I left early, but not before overhearing several conversations where relatives were trying to piece together how they'd gotten the family narrative so wrong. The next morning, I woke up to 6 missed calls from my mother and a series of increasingly frantic voicemails. Danny, we need to talk about what you said last night. Call me back. Danny, people are asking questions about your business. You can't just make claims like that without proof. Danny, your father and I are very upset about how you spoke to Jake. Call us immediately. I didn't call back. Instead, I went to work like any other Monday. But around noon, my business manager came into my office looking confused. Danny, there are people here who say they're your parents? They don't have an appointment, but they're insisting they need to speak with you. I could see them through the glass walls of my office. My parents standing in our lobby, looking around at our employees, our equipment, our obvious success, like they couldn't believe their eyes. I told my manager to send them in. Danny, my mother said as soon as she sat down, we had no idea you were doing so, well, you never asked. We thought you were still fixing computers, my father added. You never told us about any of this. When exactly would I have told you, Dad? During one of our frequent conversations where you ask about my life? Oh, wait, those don't happen. My mother looked around the office. This is really yours? All of this? Yes, Mom. I built this from nothing. No family money, no connections, no college degree. Just hard work and figuring things out as I went. That's when the real conversation started. My father cleared his throat. Danny, we owe you an apology. We clearly didn't understand what you were building here. No, you didn't. Because you never cared to find out. You were so busy being embarrassed by my existence that you never once asked what I was actually doing with my life. My mother started crying. We were just worried about you. When you dropped out of college, we thought you were throwing your life away. So your solution was to tell everyone in the family that I was a failure? To make sure I knew at every family gathering that I was the disappointment? We never said you were a failure, my father protested. Dad, last night you told the Johnsons that you had one successful son and one who never found his way. I was standing right there. The silence stretched out. They couldn't deny it because it was true. What do you want from us, Danny? My mother finally asked. I want you to acknowledge that you were wrong. I want you to admit that you spent years tearing me down because I didn't follow Jake's path. And I want you to understand that your approval isn't necessary for my success. We understand, my father said, and we're proud of what you've accomplished. Are you? Or are you just embarrassed that you've been telling people for 4 years that I'm a loser when I'm actually more successful than your golden boy? That hit home. My mother winced. Jake is still successful, she said defensively. He's a doctor. He helps people. Jake is $400,000 in debt and living paycheck to paycheck despite making $150,000 a year. That's not success, Mom. That's financial disaster with good PR. Over the next few months, the truth about Jake's situation became impossible to hide. The family finally started paying attention to what was actually happening in his life, instead of just celebrating his job title. It turned out Jake and Sarah were in serious financial trouble. Between student loans, the overpriced house, credit card debt, and their expensive lifestyle, they were barely keeping their heads above water. The pandemic had hit Jake's income, but it had also hit Sarah's. She was in private practice and lost a lot of patients during lockdowns. Their combined income dropped by almost $80,000 in 2020, but their expenses stayed the same. They'd been robbing Peter to pay Paul for months, using credit cards to pay mortgage, taking cash advances to make student loan payments, refinancing everything they could. Then Sarah got pregnant, which should have been good news but instead sent them into full panic mode. They couldn't afford the medical bills. Maternity leave would cut her income further, and they had no savings for baby expenses. I heard all this through my cousin, who heard it from Jake's mother-in-law, who was apparently helping them avoid foreclosure by lending them money. In March 2022, I got a call from Jake. We hadn't spoken directly since the wedding disaster. "Danny, we need to talk." His voice sounded different, tired, defeated, none of the arrogance I was used to. "What's up, Jake?" Look, I'm not good at this, but I need help. Financial help." I let that hang in the air for a moment. "What kind of help?" "Sarah and I are in trouble. Real trouble. We might lose the house. I know you're doing well with your business, and I was hoping maybe you could loan us some money to get us back on our feet." The irony was overwhelming. The golden boy, the successful doctor, the one who was supposedly so much better than me, was calling to ask for money from the college dropout. "How much money, Jake?" "50,000 would save the house. Maybe 75 to get us really stable again." I was quiet for a long time, thinking, "Jake, do you remember what you said to me when I dropped out of college?" "Danny, that was years ago. I was young and stupid. You said some people just aren't cut out for academic achievement. You said not everyone can handle pressure. You said maybe I'd be happier doing something simpler." "I know, and I'm sorry about that. I was wrong." "You were wrong. But it wasn't just that one conversation, was it? It was years of condescension. Years of making sure I knew you thought you were better than me. Years of standing by while mom and dad treated me like a family embarrassment. What do you want me to say, Danny? I was an arrogant asshole. I'm sorry. But right now I need help. What you need, Jake, is to learn how to manage money. You make $150,000 a year. There's no reason you should be broke except that you've been living like you make $300,000. That's easy for you to say. You don't have student loans. You're right, I don't. Because I didn't go to medical school. Because I took a different path. The path you all spent years mocking me for taking. About a week after Jake's call, my mother called and asked me to come to a family dinner. She said Jake and Sarah would be there, and they wanted to talk to me about something important. I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Jake and Sarah looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. My parents kept exchanging worried glances. "Danny," my mother started, "Jake told us about his conversation with you. We want to talk about helping him through this difficult time. We think as a family we should all contribute what we can," my father added. "We're putting in $10,000. We were hoping you might consider matching that, or perhaps contributing more since your business is doing so well." I looked around the table at these people, who had spent years making me feel worthless, who were now asking me to bail out their favorite child. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to give Jake money because he's bad with finances? It's not that he's bad with finances, Sarah spoke up for the first time. Medical school is expensive. The system is designed to keep doctors in debt. Sarah, I know doctors who live comfortably and pay off their loans. The difference is they don't buy $80,000 cars and $600,000 houses when they're making $150,000. We needed to maintain a certain image, Jake said. Professional expectations. Whose expectations? Or did you just want to look successful without doing the work of actually being financially successful? That's when my mother jumped in. Danny, don't be cruel. Jake is your brother. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated. Where was that energy when I was struggling? When I was working 16-hour days to build my business? When I was eating ramen for dinner because I was reinvesting every penny into equipment and marketing? That's different, my father said. You chose that path. And Jake chose his path too. He chose to go to expensive schools, take out massive loans, and then live beyond his means. Those were all choices. Sarah started crying, which I think was supposed to make me feel guilty, but I'd learned to recognize emotional manipulation from dealing with difficult clients. Danny, please, Jake said. I know we haven't always gotten along, but I'm begging you. We're going to lose everything. What exactly are you going to lose, Jake? The house you couldn't afford? The car payments that are strangling your budget? Maybe losing those things is exactly what you need. We have a baby coming. Sarah sobbed. How can you be so heartless? I'm not heartless. I'm practical. You're bringing a child into a financially unstable situation because you refuse to live within your means. That's not my fault. My parents looked horrified that I wasn't immediately opening my checkbook. Danny, my mother said, we raised you better than this. You have the money to help your brother. Why won't you? Because, Mom, giving Jake money doesn't solve his problem. It just enables him to continue making bad choices. He needs to learn to budget, to live below his means, to make responsible financial decisions. A bailout prevents him from learning those lessons. So you're going to let your brother lose his house out of principle? My father asked. I'm going to let my brother experience the natural consequences of his choices, the same way you all let me experience the consequences of mine when I was struggling. That's when the real anger came out. This is revenge, isn't it? Jake said. You're punishing me because you're jealous of my education and my career. I laughed. Actually laughed. Jealous? Jake, I make more money than you do. I have zero debt while you're drowning in it. I own my house. You're about to lose yours. I have 6 months of business expenses saved up. You can't make it through 1 month without a paycheck. What exactly would I be jealous of? My education, my degree, the respect that comes with being a doctor. Respect? Jake, respect is earned. And you lost mine years ago when you decided I was beneath you because I didn't follow your path. I stood up to leave, but then turned back to the table. You know what? I'll make you an offer, Jake. Not a loan, not a gift, but a job. They all looked surprised. Come work for me. I'll pay you $60,000 a year to start, which is probably more than you can afford to pay yourself right now. You can learn business operations, maybe eventually work up to managing some of our accounts. But you'd have to actually work, take direction, and acknowledge that despite your fancy degree, you have things to learn. Jake's face went red. Work for you? I'm a doctor. You're a doctor who can't pay his bills. I'm offering you a chance to earn steady money while you figure out your finances. I'm not going to work for my little brother. Then you're going to lose your house. I headed toward the door, then stopped one more time. For the record, this isn't about revenge. This is about finally setting appropriate boundaries with people who treated me like garbage for years, and now want something from me. If Jake wants help, he can earn it. Just like I had to earn everything I have. After I left, apparently all hell broke loose. My cousin called me later that night to fill me in on what happened after I left. Jake had a complete meltdown. He started screaming about how unfair it was that the college dropout was now in a position to look down on him. He said it was backwards and wrong, that I had more money than him despite his education and hard work. Sarah joined in, crying about how they were going to be humiliated if they lost their house, and how it wasn't fair that I could help them, but was choosing not to. My parents apparently tried to calm them down and suggested maybe they should consider my job offer, which made Jake even angrier. I didn't spend 8 years in school to work for Danny, he reportedly said. I'm a doctor. I save lives. He makes websites. My mother tried to point out that my website business was apparently quite successful, which led to Jake accusing her of taking Danny's side and storming out with Sarah. Over the next few months, Jake and Sarah's situation continued to deteriorate. They couldn't make their mortgage payments and went into foreclosure. They had to sell the BMW and downsize to a used Honda. They moved into a rental apartment that cost half what their mortgage payment had been. Jake's pride took a massive hit. He'd spent years being the family success story, and now he was the cautionary tale about lifestyle inflation and poor financial planning. My parents finally started to understand that having a prestigious job doesn't automatically equal financial success. They also started to realize that they'd been wrong about me for years. The family dynamic completely shifted. At gatherings, people started asking me about business and entrepreneurship instead of tiptoeing around my failure to launch. Jake, meanwhile, became the one people worried about and whispered about. In June 2022, I got a letter in the mail from Jake. An actual handwritten letter. Danny, it said, I've had a lot of time to think about everything that's happened, and I need to apologize. Not just for asking you for money, but for years of treating you like you were less than me. You were right about everything. I was living beyond my means, making terrible financial decisions, and coasting on the prestige of my job title without actually being successful. Meanwhile, you built something real from nothing, and I was too arrogant to see it. I'm working on getting my finances in order. Sarah and I are in counseling, both marriage and financial. We're learning to live within our means and make better choices. I don't expect your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand how wrong I was, and how much I underestimated you. Your brother, Jake. It was a good letter. It felt genuine. but it was also about 5 years too late. These days, my business is doing better than ever. We're up to 15 employees and projected to hit $6 million in revenue this year. I'm considering opening a second location in a nearby city. Jake and Sarah are slowly getting their act together. They're living in that small apartment. Jake took on some part-time telehealth work to bring in extra money, and they're actually making progress on their debt. The baby is healthy and beautiful, and they seem to be learning how to be responsible adults. My parents have completely changed their tune about me. Now I'm the successful entrepreneur son, and Jake is the one they worry about. The narrative has completely flipped, which is honestly kind of funny. Jake and I don't have much of a relationship, but it's not actively hostile anymore. We're polite at family gatherings, and he's stopped being condescending. Progress, I guess. Update 1. It's been a few months since my original post, and the holidays brought some new drama that I thought you'd find interesting. Thanksgiving was at my parents' house, and for the first time in years, I actually wanted to go. Not because I was eager to see everyone, but because I was curious how the family dynamic would play out now that everyone knew the real story about Jake's and my respective situations. The dinner conversation was surreal. Instead of the usual Jake worship fest, people kept asking me about my business. My uncle wanted to know about digital marketing for his accounting firm. My cousin asked about website costs for her boutique. Jake sat quietly through most of it, occasionally answering questions about work, but clearly uncomfortable with not being the center of attention. Sarah looked exhausted. Having a baby while dealing with financial stress is no joke. The weirdest moment came when my grandmother asked about my house. I mentioned I was thinking about adding a home office addition, and she said, "It's so nice that you can afford to improve your property." My mother immediately jumped in with, "Well, Jake and Sarah are doing well too. They found a nice apartment." The awkward silence that followed was deafening. Later, as I was helping with dishes, my dad pulled me aside. "Danny, I want you to know how proud we are of what you've built. We were wrong to doubt you." "Thanks, Dad. Have you thought any more about Jake's situation? Maybe there's something you could do to help?" And there it was. Even after everything, they still wanted me to bail out their golden boy. "Dad, Jake needs to solve his own problems. That's how people learn and grow. But he's family. So am I. And when I was struggling, the family advice was to figure it out myself. I did. Now it's Jake's turn." Update 2. I heard through the family grapevine that Jake finally took a second job. He's doing telehealth consultations in the evenings and weekends, which is adding about $30,000 to his annual income. More importantly, he and Sarah seem to have finally gotten serious about budgeting. They sold Sarah's jewelry, Jake sold his golf clubs, and they've cut their expenses down to bare necessities. My cousin told me Jake actually asked her for advice about budgeting apps and debt consolidation strategies. The guy who used to lecture me about not having ambition is now learning basic personal finance at age 35. Part of me feels vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad that it took almost losing everything for him to develop some humility and basic life skills. Update 3. In February, I got an unexpected call from Sarah. Jake didn't know she was calling, but she wanted to talk to me about something. We met for coffee, and she looked completely different from the entitled doctor's wife I remembered. More tired, but also more real somehow. "Danny, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll hear me out." "Okay. I know you offered Jake a job last year, and he was too proud to take it. But I was wondering, would you consider hiring me?" I was surprised. "What kind of work are you thinking about?" "I don't know. Anything. I have organizational skills. I can learn new software. I'm willing to start at the bottom. We need the income, and I'm tired of pretending we don't." It was the first honest conversation I'd had with anyone from Jake's side of the family in years. "What does Jake think about this?" "He doesn't know I'm here. He'd probably be embarrassed." But I'm past caring about embarrassment. We have a baby, we have debt, and we need steady income. I ended up hiring Sarah part-time to help with administrative work. She's actually really good at it. Detail-oriented, professional, and grateful for the opportunity in a way that Jake never would have been. Jake was indeed embarrassed when he found out, but he couldn't argue with the extra $1,500 a month it brought in. My mother gave me up so she can play mommy to her new family. Now years later wants to reconnect cause she's done something. Hey Reddit, my mom abandoned me at 12 to play house with her new family. 18 years later, she showed up needing a kidney. I had some thoughts about that. Buckle up, this gets wild. I'm Jake, 30 male, and this story starts when I was about 11 years old. My parents split when I was 9. Standard divorce stuff at first. Dad got me weekends, mom had me during the week. Everyone pretended to be civil at school events while secretly hating each other's guts. Dad was a plumber. Good guy, worked hard, Showed up to my baseball games covered in grease stains because he'd come straight from a job site. The kind of dad who'd help you build a treehouse on a Saturday and actually knew how to use the tools properly. He lived in this small 2-bedroom apartment across town that smelled like coffee and sawdust. Mom worked as a medical secretary at a family practice clinic. She'd always been obsessed with status and appearances. Even when they were married, she'd complain about Dad's job being beneath us and how we lived in that neighborhood, like we were in some war zone instead of a perfectly normal middle-class area. After the divorce, she got worse. Started dressing differently, going out more, complaining about every little thing I did. I was just a kid trying to navigate my parents splitting up, but apparently I was cramping her style. When I was 11, she started dating this guy named Douglas, investment banker, or financial advisor, or something equally boring that paid well. The kind of guy who wore designer watches and talked about his car like it was his firstborn child. He drove a BMW and lived in one of those gated communities where all the houses look exactly the same but cost $500,000. I hated him immediately. Not because he was dating my mom, I'd accepted that was going to happen eventually, but because he treated me like an inconvenient piece of furniture that came with the apartment. He'd show up to pick up Mom and barely acknowledge I existed. If I was watching TV, he'd ask Mom if the kid could go to his room so they could have adult conversation. If I wanted to tell Mom about my day at school, he'd interrupt with something about his work or some restaurant they should try. Just constant little reminders that I didn't belong in whatever new life they were building. Mom ate it up, though. She'd giggle at his stupid jokes and touch his arm like he was the most fascinating person on the planet. Meanwhile, I'd be sitting right there, and she'd forget I existed. 6 months into their relationship, she sat me down for a big talk. That's never good. Nothing good ever starts with a parent wanting to have a serious conversation with you. Turns out Douglas had proposed. They were getting married. And here's the thing. Douglas had 2 kids from his previous marriage. Twin girls, Sophie and Claire, who were 8 at the time. He had full custody because his ex-wife had moved to Europe for work and basically abandoned them. We're going to be a real family now, Mom said, like our previous family had been some kind of practice run that didn't count. I asked where I'd sleep since his house only had 3 bedrooms. Master, 1 for the twins, 1 for his home office. She got this uncomfortable look and explained they were working on solutions. Maybe converting the garage or finishing the basement eventually. Eventually. Great. The wedding happened fast. 3 months later, they got married at this fancy venue with an ice sculpture and a string quartet. I was technically in the wedding party, but felt like an afterthought. The twins were flower girls and got all this attention. I stood there in an uncomfortable suit that didn't fit right, while everyone fawned over how cute the girls looked. At the reception, I sat at the kids' table with the twins and some random cousins I'd never met. Mom and Douglas were at the head table, looking like they'd won the lottery. I watched her laugh and dance and play the perfect stepmother to those girls, and something in my chest felt hollow. That's when things really went downhill. Moving into Douglas's house was like being demoted from family member to house guest. The twins got the big bedroom with the attached bathroom and walk-in closet. Douglas's home office remained untouched. I got a fold-out couch in what was basically a storage room off the garage. Not even a real room, just a space where they kept Christmas decorations and old furniture, with a couch that pulled out into a bed that smelled like mothballs and had springs that dug into your back. It's temporary, Mom promised. Just until we figure out the basement renovation. The basement renovation never happened. That couch was my bed for the next year. School was my escape. I'd leave early, stay late for any club or activity that would have me. Baseball practice, chess club, even volunteered to help the janitor sometimes, just to avoid going back to that house. The janitor, Mr. Peterson, was actually pretty cool. He'd let me organize supplies in the storage room and would talk to me about sports and normal stuff. At home, I became invisible. Mom's entire world revolved around Sophie and Claire. She'd make them elaborate breakfasts, pancakes shaped like animals, fresh fruit, the works. I'd get a bowl and a box of cereal. She'd spend hours helping them with homework, making sure they had everything they needed for school, attending every single one of their activities. Me? I was lucky if she remembered to sign my permission slips. Douglas was even worse. He made it crystal clear I was an outsider in his house. He had rules for everything, and they all seemed designed to make my life harder. No TV after 8 p.m., no friends over without 2 weeks' notice, no eating in unauthorized areas, which was basically anywhere comfortable. But the twins? They could do whatever they wanted. They'd watch movies until midnight, have friends over constantly, leave snacks all over the house. When I pointed out the double standard, Douglas would say something about me being older and needing to set a good example. I was 12. They were 9. What kind of example was I supposed to set from my storage room bed? The worst part was watching Mom transform into a completely different person. She'd always been kind of high maintenance, but with Douglas, she became this Stepford wife who catered to his every whim and fawned over his daughters like they were royalty. She'd spend hours doing the twins' hair in elaborate braids. She'd take them shopping for new clothes constantly. She'd throw them birthday parties that looked like they cost more than Dad made in a month, and she'd post about it all over social media. My beautiful girls. So blessed with my family. Being a mom to these angels. I wasn't in the photos. I wasn't mentioned. I just didn't exist in her new narrative. One night when I was 12, I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom around 11 p.m. and heard voices from their bedroom. The door was cracked open slightly. Douglas was saying something about the situation with your son. My ears perked up immediately. He's not fitting in with the family dynamic, Douglas said. The girls are confused about why he's always sulking around. It's creating a negative environment. I wasn't sulking. I was just existing in their house. And apparently that was too much. Mom made some soft response I couldn't hear clearly. Then Douglas said something that made my stomach drop. Maybe he'd be happier with his father. I mean, be honest. You barely see him anyway. He's clearly not adjusting to our family structure. The girls need stability, and having a moody teenager around isn't helping anyone. There was a long pause. Then Mom said, in this quiet voice I'd never heard before, "You might be right. Maybe it would be better for everyone." I stood frozen in that hallway, my 12-year-old brain trying to process what I'd just heard. My own mother was discussing giving me away like I was a pet they'd decided was too much trouble. I went back to my storage room couch and didn't sleep the rest of the night. 2 weeks later, Mom sat me down for another one of her talks. She had this gentle, sympathetic look on her face that made me want to throw up. "Honey, Douglas and I have been thinking about what's best for you," she started. Red flag right there. When adults start talking about what's best for you, they're usually about to do something that's best for them. She explained that I didn't seem happy there. I wasn't bonding with my stepsisters. The living situation wasn't ideal. And Dad had a bigger apartment now. 2 bedrooms, so I'd have my own actual room. "We think you'd be happier living with your father full-time," she said. "We'd still do visits, of course. Weekends, holidays, all of that. But your primary residence would be with him." She was phrasing it like a gift, like she was doing me a favor by shipping me off. I asked about the basement renovation she'd promised. She got this uncomfortable look and said they decided to turn it into a playroom for the twins instead. They needed space for their toys and art supplies. So there it was. My mom was choosing her new family over me. She was picking her stepdaughters and their father over her actual son. And she was trying to frame it like it was for my benefit. "What if I don't want to leave?" I asked. Even though I kind of did want to leave that miserable house. She got that tight-lipped look that meant the decision was already made. "Jake, this is what's best for the family. You're old enough to understand that sometimes we have to make difficult choices." The family, not our family. The family. She'd already decided which family she belonged to, and I wasn't in it. I moved in with Dad the next month. He was thrilled to have me full-time, though I could tell he was trying to hide how angry he was at Mom. He'd gotten a bigger place specifically so I'd have my own room. He bought me new furniture and let me decorate it however I wanted. He actually showed up to my baseball games and school events. For the first time in over a year, I felt like someone actually wanted me around. The visits with Mom that she'd promised never really materialized. At first, she'd make excuses. The twins had a recital, Douglas's family was visiting, they had plans she'd forgotten about. Then the excuses got weaker. She was tired. It wasn't a good weekend, maybe next time. By the time I was 13, I was seeing her maybe once every 2 months. And even then, it felt obligatory. She'd take me to lunch, ask superficial questions about school, check her phone constantly, and then drive me back to Dad's place looking relieved that her duty was done. I stopped trying to have real conversations with her. What was the point? She'd made her choice, and I was learning to live with it. High school was better. Dad's apartment was close to a good school, and I made actual friends. Joined the baseball team properly. Worked part-time at a hardware store. Dated a girl named Rachel, who thought my dad was hilarious. I built a life that had nothing to do with my mom's perfect little replacement family. Dad never said a bad word about Mom, which I respected. Even when I'd complain about her forgetting my birthday or canceling plans, he'd just say something about adults making mistakes, and how I had to focus on my own future. He was the one who pushed me to apply to trade school programs, who helped me get my electrician's apprenticeship, who believed I could build something real. Meanwhile, Mom's social media was a constant highlight reel of her new family. Sophie and Claire's dance recitals, family vacations to Disney, Douglas's promotion, their new kitchen renovation, birthday parties that looked like magazine spreads. She was living her best life, and I wasn't part of the picture. Literally. She'd post family photos from holidays and I just wasn't in them. It was like she'd erased her first attempt at motherhood and was pretending the twins were her first and only kids. When I graduated high school, she showed up for about an hour, took a few photos, congratulated me, and left early because the twins had some event she couldn't miss. I watched her drive away and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just this empty acceptance that this was how things were. Dad took me out for steak and told me he was proud. We toasted with soda and talked about my electrician apprenticeship starting that summer. That's what family is supposed to feel like. I threw myself into work. Turned out I was actually good at electrical work. Had a knack for understanding systems and solving problems. By the time I was 22, I'd passed my journeyman exam. By 25, I had my master electrician license and was making solid money doing residential and commercial work. Dad helped me buy a small house when I was 27. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I fixed it up myself, updated all the wiring, renovated the kitchen and bathroom. It felt good building something with my own hands, creating a space that was actually mine. I'd been dating this woman named Jessica for about 2 years. She was a teacher, smart and funny, and she didn't care that I worked with my hands for a living. Her parents liked me, treated me like family at their dinners, asked about my work with actual interest. That's when I realized what I'd been missing. Adults who actually cared about you without conditions. Life was good, really good. I had work I enjoyed, a girlfriend I loved, my own house, and Dad just a few miles away. I'd built something real out of the broken pieces of my childhood. Then, after nearly 18 years of minimal contact, my phone rang with my mother's number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not since an awkward lunch where she'd spent the whole time talking about the twins' college plans and Douglas's golf handicap. Jake? Her voice sounded weird, thin, strained. Yeah, it's me. I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet? It's important. Important. The last time something was important, she'd shipped me off to live with Dad. But I was 30 now, not 12. I could handle whatever this was. Sure, when? Tomorrow? I could come to you. She'd never offered to come to me before. That should have been my first warning sign. We met at a coffee shop near my house the next afternoon. I got there first and grabbed a table in the back. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She'd aged hard. The polished, perfect woman from all those social media posts looked thin and tired. Her clothes were still expensive, but hung on her like she'd lost weight. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Jake, she said, sitting down across from me. Thank you for meeting me. You said it was important. She ordered coffee she didn't drink, kept fidgeting with her purse strap. Finally, she looked at me with this expression that I couldn't quite read. I have kidney disease, she said. Stage 4. It's been progressing for about 3 years, but it's gotten worse. My kidneys are failing, and I need a transplant. I sat there processing this information. My first thought, and I'm not proud of this, was wondering why she was telling me. We barely knew each other at this point. I was basically a stranger she'd given birth to 30 years ago. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, because what else do you say? I've been on the transplant list for a year, but the wait times are long. 5, maybe 6 years. I don't have that long. She paused. I need a living donor. There it was. The real reason for this meeting. The twins were tested, she continued. Neither of them are compatible. Douglas isn't a match either. I've had extended family tested, my sister, my cousins, and no luck. But you, she looked at me with this desperate hope. You're my son. There's a much higher chance you'd be compatible. I just stared at her. After 18 years of being basically erased from her life, she wanted me to give her a kidney. I know we haven't been as close as we should be, she said, which was the understatement of the century. But you're my son. Family helps family. That's what we do. Family helps family. This woman, who'd chosen her new family over me when I was 12, who'd missed my high school graduation for a dance recital, who'd erased me from her social media and her life, she was sitting here talking about family, like she had any right to use that word with me. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, I understand this is a lot, but Jake, her voice cracked. I'm scared. The doctors say if I don't get a transplant soon, I might have less than a year. Part of me, the part that was still that 12-year-old kid hoping his mom would choose him, felt something. Sympathy maybe, or just the automatic response to seeing someone in pain. But the larger part, the part that had spent 18 years learning to live without her, felt nothing but cold calculation. "I'll think about it," I repeated. "This isn't something I can decide right now." She pulled out her phone. "Can I give you my doctor's information? They can explain the process, answer any questions you have about compatibility testing, and what the donation would involve." I took the information to be polite. We sat there for another awkward 10 minutes while she talked about her treatment, her prognosis, how scared Sophie and Claire were. Not once did she ask about my life, my work, if I was seeing anyone. It was all about her crisis and what I could do to fix it. When we finally left, she hugged me. I stood there stiff as a board while she squeezed me, whispering, thank you, like I'd already agreed to something. I drove home in a daze and immediately called Dad. "She wants what?" he exploded when I told him. "A kidney. She needs a transplant and wants me to get tested to see if I'm compatible." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Dad let out a long breath. "Son, I can't tell you what to do here. This is your decision, but I want you to really think about what you're being asked to give. This isn't lending someone $50. This is major surgery, permanent changes to your body, real risks. I know. And I want you to think about who's asking. Not who you wish was asking, but who she actually is. The woman who gave you up because you didn't fit into her new life, who hasn't been a mother to you in 18 years, who only came back because she needs something from you." He wasn't wrong. That night, I talked to Jessica about it. She listened to the whole story. The divorce, the remarriage, being shipped off to Dad's, the 18 years of barely existing in my mother's life. "What do you want to do?" she asked when I was done. "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should help because it's the right thing to do. But another part of me is angry that she only came back because she needs something." "Both of those feelings are valid," Jessica said. "But let me ask you this. If you donate and save her life, what do you think happens after? Do you think she suddenly becomes the mother you needed when you were 12? Or do you think she takes what she needs and goes back to her perfect family while you recover from major surgery?" I didn't have an answer to that. Over the next few days, Mom started calling regularly. At first, it was just checking in, seeing if I'd thought about it. Then, it escalated to sending me articles about living donation, statistics about success rates, testimonials from donors talking about how fulfilling it was to save a life. Then, the texts started from numbers I didn't recognize. Sophie and Claire, the twins who'd gotten everything I'd been denied. Sophie: "Hi, Jake. This is Sophie. Mom told us about you maybe being able to help. We're really scared. She's all we have." Claire: "Please consider helping our mom. She's the best mom in the world and we can't lose her." The best mom in the world. I wondered if they knew about me at all, or if I was just some distant relative who'd conveniently showed up with compatible organs. Then Douglas called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Jake, we need to talk about your mother's situation," he said, skipping any greeting. "What about it?" "She needs this transplant. The girls are devastated. This family needs you to step up and do the right thing." This family. Not our family. This family. Just like Mom used to say. "I'm thinking about it," I said. "Thinking about it? Your mother is dying." What's there to think about? Whether I want to undergo major surgery for someone who abandoned me when I was a kid. The silence was sharp. Then Douglas said, in this cold voice, "That's ancient history. You're an adult now. Stop being selfish and help your mother." I hung up on him. The pressure campaign continued. My aunt called, saying Mom had always loved me and families should stick together. Cousins I barely remembered sent Facebook messages about the importance of family. Even people from Mom's church group started reaching out, talking about Christian duty and forgiveness. It was overwhelming, but it also made me realize something. Not a single one of these people had cared where I was or how I was doing for the past 18 years. Now they all had opinions about what I owed to the woman who'd given me up. I decided to do something I probably should have done sooner. I went to talk to someone who knew about organ donation, not emotionally, but medically and legally. A buddy of mine, Carson, was a nurse at the hospital. I called him up and asked if we could talk. "Kidney donation is serious business," Carson explained over lunch. "It's major surgery with real risks: infection, bleeding, blood clots, reactions to anesthesia. Most people do fine, but most isn't all. Plus, living with one kidney means permanent lifestyle changes. You have to be more careful about certain medications. You're at higher risk for high blood pressure and kidney disease yourself down the line. What about recovery? 6 to 8 weeks before you're back to normal work, assuming you don't have complications. That's 6 to 8 weeks of lost income if you're self-employed, which you are. And there's no guarantee your relationship with your mother improves after. In fact, in my experience, when family dynamics are already bad, going through something this intense often makes them worse. That night, I made a list. 2 columns. Reasons to donate, reasons not to. Reasons to donate. It's my biological mother. I could save her life. I'd avoid family guilt and pressure. It's technically the right thing to do. Reasons not to. She abandoned me when I was 12. She chose her new family over me repeatedly. She's only back because she needs something major surgery with real risks. Permanent changes to my body. Lost income during recovery. No guarantee of compatibility anyway. Even if I donate, nothing suggests our relationship will improve. I don't owe her anything. The list wasn't even close. I called Mom and asked to meet again. This time I picked the location, a park near my house where we could talk privately. She showed up looking hopeful. I hated that I was about to disappoint her, but I'd made my decision. I'm not getting tested, I said, before she could even sit down. Her face fell. What? Why not? Because I don't want to. This is major surgery with real risks, and I'm not willing to go through that for someone who hasn't been a mother to me in 18 years. But I'm your mother, she said, like that word meant something between us. No, you were my mother. Past tense. You stopped being my mother when you chose Douglas and his daughters over me. You stopped being my mother when you shipped me off because I didn't fit into your perfect new family. You stopped being my mother every time you missed my events, forgot my birthday, or erased me from your life. I never meant to hurt you, she started. But you did. For 18 years, you hurt me by not being there. And now you show up asking me to give you a part of my body? That's not how this works. She started crying. I'm dying, Jake. Doesn't that matter to you at all? Of course it matters. I'm not a monster. But your medical emergency doesn't erase 18 years of you treating me like I didn't exist. It doesn't undo all the times you chose them over me. It doesn't make us family just because you need something. Please, she begged. I know I wasn't perfect, but I'm trying to make things right now. Let me make things right. You can't make things right by asking me for organs. That's not how it works. If you wanted to make things right, you should have done it years ago. When I graduated high school. When I got my first real job. When I bought my house. You had plenty of opportunities to be my mother again, and you chose not to take them. You don't get to show up now and demand that I save you. So you're just going to let me die? You're not dying because of me. You're dying because you have kidney disease. I'm not responsible for that, and I'm not responsible for fixing it. You have a whole family that you chose over me. Let them figure it out. I stood up to leave. She grabbed my arm. Jake, please, think about Sophie and Claire. They need their mother. And there it was. Even now, even when she was begging for her life, she was making it about them. Then I hope they find a donor, I said, pulling my arm away. But it's not going to be me. I walked away from her crying in that park and didn't look back. The aftermath was immediate and ugly. My phone exploded with messages from family members calling me selfish, cruel, heartless, telling me I was condemning my own mother to death, that I'd regret this for the rest of my life. Douglas called from yet another number I didn't have blocked. You're killing her, you know that? You're murdering your own mother because you can't get over the past. I'm not killing anyone. I'm just not volunteering to undergo major surgery for someone who abandoned me. That's not the same thing. She's dying, he screamed. Then maybe you should have treated her son better when she had the chance, I said, and hung up. The twins sent more messages. These were nastier, less about begging and more about attacking. Sophie, you're a horrible person. How can you just let someone die when you could help? Claire, I hope you can live with yourself knowing you killed our mom. I blocked them both. My aunt tried the manipulation approach. Your mother made mistakes, but don't you want to be the bigger person? Show her you're better than she was? I didn't respond. The only person who supported me completely was Dad. He called the day after my conversation with Mom. How you holding up? He asked. I'm okay. Feel like a bad person, but I'm okay. You're not a bad person. You're a person with boundaries. There's a difference. Everyone thinks I'm letting her die. Everyone didn't live through what you lived through. They don't get a vote in what you do with your body. He paused. I'm proud of you, son. I know that doesn't help with the guilt, but I'm proud you stood up for yourself. That helped more than he knew. Jessica was my rock through all of it. She screened calls, blocked numbers, and physically stood between me and a family member who showed up at my house one night to talk sense into me. This is harassment, she told Douglas when he tried to push past her at my front door. Leave now or I'm calling the police. He left, but not before calling me a murderer one more time. The social media campaign was something else. Family members started posting vague things about the importance of family and people who refused to help their loved ones. Some were less vague and posted directly about organ donation and how anyone who could help but chose not to was basically committing murder. I stayed off social media completely, deleted the apps from my phone. Whatever they were saying, I didn't want to see it. 3 weeks after my conversation with Mom in the park, Dad called with news. I heard through the grapevine that your mother found a donor. My stomach dropped. She did? Yeah. Some organization that helps match living donors with recipients. Apparently, she's been on multiple lists, and one finally came through. She's having the surgery next week. Relief flooded through me so fast I had to sit down. She'd found another donor. I wasn't responsible for whether she lived or died. The guilt that had been crushing me for weeks suddenly lifted. That's good, I managed. That's really good. Yeah, Dad said. Thought you'd want to know. I didn't go to the hospital, didn't send flowers or cards. Just went about my life and tried to pretend the past few weeks hadn't happened. The surgery was successful according to the Family Gossip Network. Mom's kidney function improved, and her prognosis looked good. Sophie and Claire posted grateful messages on social media about the angel donor who'd saved their mother's life. Not a single mention of the son who'd said no. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 months after the surgery, my doorbell rang on a Saturday morning. I opened it to find Mom standing there, looking healthier than she had in our previous meetings, but still thin. Jake, she said, can we talk? Every instinct told me to close the door, but curiosity won out. What do you want? I wanted to thank you, she said, which wasn't what I expected. The donor, he was a stranger who saw my story online and volunteered. Because of him, I'm going to live. And I realized something through all of this. I waited. I realized that I don't have a relationship with my son. Not really. You were right about everything you said. I chose my new family over you. And that was wrong. I was a bad mother. And I'm sorry. The apology felt hollow. Too late and too convenient now that she had what she needed from someone else. Okay, I said. I want to fix things between us. I want to be your mother again, if you'll let me. Why now? Because you feel guilty? Because you almost died and had some epiphany? Because I realized I've been running from my mistakes instead of facing them. I convinced myself that you were better off with your father, that my new family needed me more, that the past was past. But you were right. I abandoned you, and I want to make it right. I looked at this woman who'd given birth to me, who'd pushed me out of her life when I was 12, who'd only come back when she needed something. I looked at her and felt nothing. I appreciate the apology, I said, but I don't think I can be your son anymore. That ship sailed a long time ago. Jake, I built a life without you. A good life. I have a father who actually shows up. I have a girlfriend who loves me. I have work that I'm proud of and a house that's mine. I don't have a hole in my life where you used to be because I filled that hole with people who actually care about me. But I do care about you, she insisted. Maybe you do now, but you didn't when it mattered. You didn't care when I was a kid sleeping on a couch in a storage room. You didn't care when you missed my graduation. You didn't care for 18 years. I'm sorry you almost died. I'm glad you found a donor, but I can't be your son just because you finally feel guilty about how you treated me. She was crying again. I can't change the past. No, you can't, and I can't forget it. So I think it's better if we just don't do this. You have your family. I have mine. Let's just leave it at that. Please don't shut me out, she begged. You shut me out first, I said gently. All I'm doing is accepting that and moving on. I closed the door. This time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt free. Dad came over that night with takeout, and we watched a game. We didn't talk about Mom or the conversation or any of it. Just sat there like we'd done 1,000 times before, comfortable in each other's company. That's what family is supposed to feel like. Jessica got home late from a school event. She kicked off her shoes, grabbed some food, and curled up next to me on the couch. Your mom came by today, I said. Oh? She didn't sound surprised. She apologized. Wants to build a relationship now that she's healthy again. What did you tell her? That I already have a family. I don't need her trying to be something she never was. Jessica squeezed my hand. Good. A few weeks later, I got an invitation in the mail. Sophie was getting married. The invitation was addressed to me, but there was a handwritten note from Mom on the back. I know I have no right to ask, but it would mean a lot to the girls if you came. We'd love to have you there. I showed it to Dad. He read it, shook his head, and handed it back. What are you going to do? He asked. Nothing. I'm not going. You sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I spent too many years trying to be part of a family that didn't want me. I'm done with that. I threw the invitation away. The wedding happened. I saw the photos on social media through mutual friends. Everyone looked happy and perfect, just like always. Mom posted about her beautiful daughter and her perfect family. No mention of her son who'd chosen not to attend. It didn't bother me. That was their family, not mine. 6 months later, I proposed to Jessica. We got married in a small ceremony with the people who actually mattered. Dad, Jessica's family, our close friends. It was perfect, simple, genuine, full of people who'd actually shown up for us over the years. Mom sent a card. It was a generic congratulations card, with a note that said she wished us well and hoped I was happy. I filed it away and forgot about it. Life moved on. I built my business, bought a bigger house, started thinking about kids. The chapter with my mother was closed, and I was okay with that. My phone rings sometimes with her number. I don't answer. She sends cards on my birthday and at Christmas. I appreciate the thought, but don't respond. We exist in separate orbits now, and that's how it needs to be. Because at the end of the day, family isn't about biology. It's about who shows up, who's there when things get hard, who chooses you every day, not just when they need something. My mother taught me that lesson, just not the way she intended. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My father fired me after believing my brother's lies. "You're no longer my son," he yelled. 6 months later, I handed him the evidence that destroyed everything. Now my brother is begging for help. Sup, Reddit. After grinding for 12 years at my father's company, he called me a thief, had security drag me out of the building, and told me I wasn't his son anymore. All because he believed my brother's lies. That was 6 months ago. Let me start from the beginning. Name's Kai, 36 male, and up until 6 months ago, I was the operations director at Parker Industrial Supply. Third-generation family business my grandfather started in a garage, turned into a $40 million manufacturing company by my old man Larry. Industrial parts, hydraulic components, specialty fasteners. I spent 12 years working every position from the warehouse floor up, loading trucks at 5 a.m. in winter when I was 23, running the CNC machines, managing inventory, supplier contracts, logistics nightmares. My father demanded it. Earn your place or get out. So I earned it. Then there was my brother Sean, 2 years younger, better looking, born with charm that made people forget he'd never done a hard day's work. While I was in the warehouse, Sean was at state school partying through a business degree our father paid for. When Sean joined at 25, he walked straight into VP of sales. No warehouse time, no grunt work. Just a corner office, company car, and a salary that made my 12 years look like a joke. The old man called it strategic placement. Said Sean had people skills that I lacked. Said sales required a certain personality type, and Sean was a natural. What he really meant was that he reminded him of himself at that age. And I reminded him of my grandfather, who'd been a machinist first and a businessman second. In my father's mind, being good with your hands meant you weren't quite good enough for the executive suite. But here's the thing about being the overlooked son. You pay attention. You notice details. You document everything because you know you'll never get the benefit of the doubt. Something was off with the numbers. Started noticing it 8 months before everything exploded. Inventory discrepancies. Purchase orders for materials that never arrived. Expense reports from Sean's sales trips that looked inflated compared to actual deals closed. Nothing huge at first. Just small things that made my BS detector go off. And once you start seeing the cracks, you can't unsee them. I made the mistake of mentioning it to my father during a weekly meeting. Asked if he wanted me to audit the sales department's expenses. The old man's face went red. "You questioning your brother's work, Kai?" I backed off. Said I was just being thorough, just trying to keep the books clean. But Larry wasn't having it. He launched into this speech about how sales required investment, how you had to spend money to make money, how Sean had brought in 3 major clients in the past year while I was stuck worrying about paperwork. That's when I should have known I was screwed. When your own father defends your brother's questionable expenses before you've even finished asking the question. Arthur Castellano was the only person who didn't treat me like I was paranoid. 23 years with the company, old school accountant who trusted his own math over computers. We were reviewing quarterly reports when I showed him the discrepancies. He went quiet, pulled out his reading glasses, went through every document for 20 minutes. "You're right. Something's off." My stomach dropped. When a CFO with 2 decades of experience confirms your suspicions, you're not paranoid. You're onto something bad. Arthur pulled out a legal pad, started writing figures, cross-referencing the flagged transactions against quarterly revenue, overhead costs, profit margins. I watched him fill an entire page with numbers. "How much?" Arthur tapped his pen against the pad, stared at the math. Without a full audit? Pattern like this going back 18 months? We're looking at $300,000 minimum. Could be as high as $500,000. $500,000. The kind of number that destroys companies and sends people to prison. We tell my father. Arthur looked at me over his glasses. Kai, your father's not going to want to hear this. You know how he is about Sean. I knew. But I was stupid enough to think blood and business ethics would win out over favoritism. Biggest mistake of my life. The meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon in late March. I'd spent 3 days gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Bank statements, purchase orders, shipping manifests, expense reports, everything organized in a binder with tabs and highlighted sections like I was preparing for a court case. Because in a way, I was. My father sat behind his desk in the office. Sean was there too, lounging in the leather chair by the window, with that easy confidence of someone who'd never had to fight for his place. I laid out the evidence. Professional, just the facts. Showed them the discrepancies. Pointed out the patterns. Explained how the numbers didn't match up and suggested we bring in an outside auditor to investigate. My father listened without interrupting, face getting redder with every page I turned. I thought it was anger at the situation, at the possibility someone was stealing from his company. I was wrong about that too. When I finished, there was silence. Then he stood up. Didn't look at the evidence. Didn't ask questions. You brought me in here to accuse your brother of theft? I'm showing you irregularities that need investigation. Irregularities. He spit the word out. You've been looking for ways to undermine Sean since he joined. Because you're jealous. Because he's better at his job than you've ever been. Sean hadn't said a word. Just sat there with this slight smile, enjoying the show. The numbers don't lie. We need to figure out what to do with you, my father cut me off. That's when I realized I'd just handed Sean the rope to hang me with. And from the look on his face, he was going to enjoy every second of it. Sean didn't just beat me. He destroyed me with the kind of precision that makes you wonder how long he'd been planning it. Turns out, probably since the day he joined the company. The meeting went from bad to catastrophic in under 20 minutes. Dad, I think we should talk about what's really going on here. Concerned. Like the reasonable brother helping his troubled sibling. My father sat back down. Go ahead. Kai's been under stress. Making mistakes in shipping schedules, snapping at warehouse staff, showing up late. I didn't want to say anything, but I think he might be having some kind of breakdown. I stared at him. What are you talking about? See? Right there. That anger. It's not like you, Kai. Sean turned to our father. I think he's projecting his own issues onto me. Creating these conspiracy theories about missing money because he can't handle the pressure of his position. The speed at which he flipped the script. Suddenly, I wasn't the guy who discovered theft. I was the unstable employee having a breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown. The numbers are right here. The numbers that you compiled. Sean cut in smoothly. Based on your interpretation. Dad, I've been in sales for 8 years. I know my expense reports are higher than some other departments. That's the nature of the job. Client dinners, travel, entertainment. It's all legitimate business expenses that generate real revenue. Then, you won't mind an independent audit verifying that, I shot back. Wrong thing to say. My father's face went purple. Face. You want me to spend company money on an audit because you've got some paranoid theory about your brother? You want me to bring in outsiders to go through our books and make us look like we don't know how to run our own business? I want to make sure we're not hemorrhaging money. The only thing hemorrhaging around here is my patience with this nonsense. Larry stood up again. I've had enough of this. Kai, you're suspended. 2 weeks, without pay. Use that time to figure out if you want to be part of this family business or if you want to keep making accusations against your brother. Suspended. For bringing evidence of potential theft to the owner of the company. I looked at Sean. He was still wearing that slight smile, like he'd been waiting years for this exact moment. This is insane, I said. What's insane is a son turning against his own brother, my father replied. Now get out. I don't want to see you for 2 weeks. Maybe that'll give you time to remember what family means. I walked out with that binder of evidence, knowing I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, but I didn't realize how big until 3 days later. The suspension was bad enough. 2 weeks without pay when you're living in a company-owned apartment and driving a company car meant you suddenly realized how little was actually yours. I spent those first 2 days going through the evidence again, looking for something stronger, something undeniable. I called Arthur on day 2, asked if he'd stand with me if I pushed for an independent audit. He went quiet for a long time, too long. Kai, I have a family, a pension. I'm 3 years from retirement. That's when I should have known the walls were closing in. But I figured I'd weather it. Spend the time organizing more evidence. Maybe approach other board members. My father would eventually come around when the numbers became impossible to ignore. Then day 3 happened. I was at the grocery store buying ramen and cheap coffee, trying to stretch my personal savings, when my phone rang. My father. "You need to come by the office, 4 p.m. Don't be late." He hung up before I could respond. Part of me thought maybe he'd looked at the evidence. Maybe he'd realized I was right. Maybe this was him calling me back to apologize and start a real investigation. I was an idiot. When I walked into his office, Sean was there. So was Barbara from HR. That's when I knew. "Kai, we've conducted an internal review. What we found is troubling." My chest tightened. "What review?" "Your financial activities." He slid a folder across. "Purchase orders with your signature. For materials never delivered. Money that went into accounts we can't trace." I opened it. Every page felt like a punch to the gut. My signature. My authorization codes. Purchase orders totaling $400,000. Suppliers I'd never heard of. 18 months of theft with my name stamped all over it. The same exact pattern I'd found in Sean's records. He'd just copy-pasted his own crime and changed the name to mine. "This is forged," I said, but my hands were shaking, which made me look completely guilty. "I never authorized any of this. Someone used my credentials." "They're in the system under your login," Barbara said flatly. "Someone used my credentials. This is exactly what I was warning you about." "What you were trying to do," my father cut in, "was cover your theft by accusing your brother. Arthur brought these to my attention yesterday." Arthur, the CFO who'd agreed something was wrong, who'd helped me see the pattern. Arthur had sold me out, or Sean had gotten to him first with fabricated evidence, and Arthur chose survival. "This is a setup," I said, hating how desperate I sounded. "Sean's been stealing and now he's framing me. What I see is a son who stole from his own family." Larry's voice was ice. "You're terminated. Security will escort you out. 1 hour to clear your things from the company apartment. Car keys stay here. Computer, phone, everything stays. Dad, I'm not your dad. You're not my son. You're a former employee who's lucky I'm not calling the cops." He shoved a document at me. "Sign it. Resignation letter. You sign. We don't press charges. You fight. I'll have you arrested before you reach your car." The room spun. I looked at Sean, still wearing that smile. At Barbara, staring at her notes. And I signed. Because I had nothing. No lawyer. No evidence that wasn't buried under forgeries. No way to fight. My father had just chosen the golden child over me. Security walked me out. Jerry from the warehouse wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood there while I threw my life into garbage bags. 1 hour isn't long to pack up 3 years. When I left that building, I had 3 garbage bags, a dying laptop, $1,840 in the bank, and nowhere to go. Sean had won. He'd stolen from the company, framed me for it, turned my father against me, gotten me fired and homeless in one afternoon. And he'd made it look easy. Sleeping in your car in November teaches you things about survival, like how long you can go without showering before people literally cross the street to avoid you, or which gas stations have bathrooms where you can heat up instant ramen with sink water at 2 a.m. without getting kicked out, or how many layers of clothes you need when the temperature drops to 20 degrees. The first night in the Walmart parking lot, I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. Night 4, security knocked on my window at 3 a.m. with a flashlight in my face. Told me to leave or they'd call the cops for loitering. So I drove to a different Walmart across town and started the whole humiliating process over. This was what 12 years of loyal work got you when the golden child decided you were in his way. Every apartment I called ran credit checks. Called Parker Industrial for employment verification. Whatever Barbara was telling them turned me radioactive. Denied. Old high school friends suddenly had convenient excuses. "Man, I'd love to help, but my girlfriend would kill me. Kai, buddy, I'm in a studio apartment. There's barely room for me. I heard about what happened at your dad's company. Maybe it's better if we don't, you know." Yeah, I knew. By day 6, I was down to $943. Spent everything on cheap motels when rain made the car unbearable, and dollar menu food that made you feel worse after eating it. Applied to 11 jobs, got 0 callbacks. Day 23, I was stocking shelves at a hardware store for $12 an hour. Night shift. The interview, if you could call it that, lasted 5 minutes. Manager was Carlos, a guy in his 50s who'd seen enough desperation not to judge it. "You ever work retail?" "No, but I managed logistics for a manufacturing company for 12 years. Carlos looked at my wrinkled shirt and 3-day stubble. At the car I'd been sleeping in parked in his lot. He knew a hard luck story when he saw one. You show up on time, you work, I don't care about your story. Can you lift 50 pounds? Yes. You're hired. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I had a job. Just enough to keep from starving. Found an apartment day 35. $600 a month for a studio that should have been condemned. Took every dollar I'd saved from the hardware store job, plus what was left from my original savings. Walls so thin you heard neighbors breathing. Radiator that clanged like murder every time it started. Bathroom with mold growing on the mold. But it had 4 walls and a locking door. After a month in my car, it felt like a palace. Month 2 was when the story started spreading through the local business community like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone in the local manufacturing network knew Kai Parker had been caught stealing, embezzling hundreds of thousands, got caught, got fired, probably going to jail soon. You lose everything. People assume you deserve it. Nobody wants to associate with the guy who betrayed blood. I stopped going out except for work. Stopped trying to explain what really happened because nobody wanted to hear it. Month 3, my car died. Transmission gave out. The mechanic quoted me $2,800 to fix it. I had $450 in the bank after paying rent and buying food for the month. Wasn't even a choice. So I started taking the bus. 2 hours each way to get to the hardware store. 4 hours a day on public transportation, working 8-hour shifts for $12 an hour, going home to my shoebox apartment to eat microwaved food and try not to think about how my entire life had collapsed. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 12 years building a career, learning a business from the ground up, getting legitimately good at what I did. And now I was making less than the warehouse kids I used to manage. That's what I thought about during those long bus rides. Just how unfair it all was. But here's what happens when you hit bottom and keep going. You start to see things clearly. And I realized something during month 4, while I was loading boxes of drill bits at 2 a.m. and trying not to think about my old life. I was still paying attention, still noticing patterns, still remembering details others overlooked. Same skill I developed over 12 years as the overlooked son. The ability to notice details, to spot patterns, to remember things that didn't add up, to see what others missed. Because here's what didn't make sense. If Sean had successfully framed me for embezzlement, if I was the thief and he was the innocent victim, why hadn't they pressed charges? My father said I was lucky he wasn't calling the cops. But 4 months later, no cops, no charges, no legal action, just a quiet resignation and me disappearing into the night. That's when I realized they couldn't press charges. Because if they did, there'd be an investigation. Real investigators who didn't care about family politics. Who'd find the real trail of missing money? They couldn't afford a real investigation. Which meant somewhere, somehow, there was still evidence that could prove what really happened. I just had to find it. And I had to do it without resources, without access to the company, without allies except for my own stubborn refusal to accept this as my ending. On a Tuesday in month 5, while eating dollar store pasta, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just an attachment. Financial records from Parker Industrial exploded across my screen. Purchase orders, expense reports, bank transfers, 2 years of data, every entry marked in red with notes highlighting discrepancies. At the bottom, one line, "You were right. I'm sorry I didn't stand with you. Start here. Arthur." The CFO who'd thrown me under the bus just handed me a loaded gun. And suddenly I remembered something my grandfather used to say. The only thing more dangerous than someone with nothing to lose is someone with nothing to lose who knows how to keep receipts. Time to start climbing. You know what's worse than being broke, homeless, and wrongly accused? Trying to prove your innocence when the entire world has already decided you're guilty. But here's what 6 months at rock bottom taught me. When you've got nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. Arthur's spreadsheet gave me a map. Now I needed to follow it to the money. I started spending my free time at the public library. Free internet. Quiet place to work. I created a new email address. Started reaching out to vendors listed in the suspicious purchase orders. Most didn't respond. Some didn't exist. But a few got back. One email changed everything. Small fabrication shop in Ohio. I'd asked about business with Parker Industrial over the past 3 years. The owner replied in 2 days. "We did work for Parker 5 years ago. Haven't had contact since 2019. Why?" I looked at Arthur's flagged purchase order, dated 8 months ago, for $47,000 in custom parts supposedly from this Ohio shop. Parts they never made. Money they never received. Got him. I documented it. Started working through the vendor list. Calling companies, sending emails, asking questions. Found out half the suppliers in those purchase orders had never done business with Parker Industrial in the time frame listed. Someone was creating fake purchase orders, authorizing payments to ghost vendors, and pocketing the money. That someone was Sean. Had to be. He had access to the purchasing system. He had the authorization codes, and he'd been clever about it. Small amounts spread across dozens of transactions over 2 years. Nothing big enough to trigger automatic red flags. 3 weeks after Arthur's email, he showed up at the hardware store. 6 a.m. end of my shift. I was loading the last pallet when I turned, and there he was, standing in the aisle like a ghost from my old life. Kai. Arthur. He didn't waste time. Pulled out a flash drive and pushed it into my hand like he was passing classified intel. Banking records. 3 years. Every transaction. Everything you need. I stared at the drive. This was it. This was proof. Why now? Why not 5 months ago when it would have actually mattered? His face twisted. Because I've been watching Sean work without you there to balance him. He's getting reckless. Bigger amounts, more frequent transfers. He thinks he won. And your father... Arthur stopped. Swallowed hard. Your father's sick, Kai. Heart problems. Not thinking clearly. He's letting Sean do whatever he wants. At this rate, the company has maybe 6 months before it collapses. Should have thought of that before you sold me out. I know. I chose survival over truth. That's something I'll carry forever. He looked me dead in the eye. But Sean's planning something big. I don't know what. But when it hits, there won't be anything left to save. Whatever you're going to do with that drive, do it fast. He left before I could ask what he meant. I went home, made coffee, sat down at my rickety table, opened my laptop, inserted the flash drive, the files loaded, hundreds of them. Banking records, transaction logs, account statements. 3 years of financial data from Parker Industrial Supply, organized by quarter, by account, by transaction type. Arthur had given me everything. I started digging. 1 week, 8-hour sessions after warehouse shifts ended at 6 a.m. Cross-referencing purchase orders with bank transfers. Matching invoice dates with deposits. Following every dollar. By day 3, I knew it was worse than anyone thought. By day 7, I had the full picture. $892,000. Not the $300,000 to $500,000 Arthur originally estimated. Not even close. Sean had stolen $892,000 over 3 years. 217 separate transactions. Fake vendors. Inflated expense reports. Kickback schemes with real suppliers who overcharged and split the difference with him. He'd built an entire criminal enterprise inside the family business. And he'd done it so carefully that without someone examining every single transaction with paranoid attention to detail, you'd never catch it. But I caught it, and I had receipts for every single cent. I started building the case file like my life depended on it. Spreadsheets color-coded by transaction type. Vendor contacts with email confirmations they'd never done the work listed. Bank transfers. A timeline showing how the theft accelerated right after Sean got his promotion. It took another month. The hardware store shifts from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., then straight to the library to investigate until exhaustion forced me to sleep. 4 hours of sleep on a good night. 3 on most. Lost 15 pounds. Looked like a ghost. Carlos pulled me aside one shift and asked if I was dying of something. Working on something important, I told him. Better be worth dying for, he said. It was. By month 6, I had everything. Complete case. Evidence that would hold up in court. Enough to clear my name. Enough to destroy my brother. The question was what to do with it. I could go to the cops. Let them handle it. Watch from the sidelines while Sean got arrested and my father realized he'd thrown out the wrong son. But that felt too easy. Too much like justice without the satisfaction of watching them realize exactly how badly they'd screwed up. I made calls to competitors doing the same work as Parker. Found out Connolly Manufacturing was hunting for acquisitions. They'd wanted to buy Parker for years, but my father always said no. I called their VP of acquisitions, guy named Adrian, told his secretary I had information about Parker Industrial that his boss would want to see. Got a meeting for the next day. I walked into Connolly's headquarters in my best button-down, carrying a folder thick enough to be a weapon. He looked at me like I was something the janitor forgot to sweep up. You've got 15 minutes. Make it worth my time. I slid the folder across his desk. Parker Industrial's VP of Sales has stolen $892,000 from the company over 3 years. The owner doesn't know because it's his son. The CFO just gave me 3 years of banking records proving it. The company's bleeding out and nobody's stopping it. Adrian opened the folder, started reading. 15 minutes turned into 45. He didn't say a word. Just went through page after page, his expression getting more focused. Finally looked up. This is verified? Every number. It's all there. And you're bringing this to me because I want to watch what happens when my father realizes he destroyed the wrong son. And because I want a job when this is over. He leaned back, studied me like I was a math problem. This goes down. It's going to be brutal. Your father loses everything. Your brother goes to prison. You good with that? I thought about sleeping in my car, the hardware store at 2 a.m. My father telling me I wasn't his son. Yeah, I'm good with it. Adrian smiled. Let's talk about your salary requirements. Corporate acquisitions aren't dramatic. They're surgical, cold. I got to watch it happen from front row seats. Adrian hired me as a consultant the same day I brought him the evidence. Real salary, real office, actual respect from coworkers who didn't think I was a thief. He put me to work doing what I did best, documenting every crack in Parker Industrial's foundation. Felt strange at first, helping destroy my grandfather's legacy. But then I'd remember Sean was already destroying it. I was just controlling the collapse. The first offer came in mid-October. Connolly sent my father a letter proposing acquisition at 60% of the company's value from 3 years ago. Included very careful language about financial irregularities that would require investigation during due diligence. My father rejected it within an hour, called Adrian personally, told him Parker wasn't for sale at any price, and to shove his insulting offer. Connolly's second letter wasn't an offer. It was a warning shot, sent directly to Parker's board of directors. Detailed summary of the financial evidence I'd compiled. Systematic discrepancies. Potential embezzlement. Strong recommendation for immediate independent audit before the company imploded. That's when the dominoes started falling. Parker Industrial had 5 board members. My father controlled 3 votes, but the other 2 were outside investors. They saw that letter and smelled blood. Emergency board meeting. Demanded audit. My father tried to block it, called it a waste of resources. Got outvoted 2-3. The outside investors didn't care about family. They cared about their money. The audit took 6 weeks. Forensic accountants came in with boxes of documents and laptops, set up in a conference room, went through every transaction, every bank record, every expense report for the past 3 years. They found everything I'd found, and then they kept digging. Final number, $908,000. 3 years of systematic theft, 217 separate transactions. The accountants traced it to Sean in 2 weeks. His digital signatures, his authorization codes, bank accounts in his name hidden behind a shell company registered in Delaware. He'd been clever, but not clever enough. Sean tried to run, made it as far as the airport, ticket to Cancun in hand, when the FBI grabbed him at the gate. Federal wire fraud, bank fraud, interstate embezzlement, the kind of charges that come with mandatory prison time and no chance of a plea deal. My father had a heart attack when FBI showed up with warrants. Mild one. Survived, but spent a week in the hospital while federal agents tore through every file in the building. I didn't visit, didn't call, just waited. Second acquisition offer came while my father was hospitalized. Connolly offering $18 million, about 45% of previous value. Take it or face bankruptcy when legal fees and federal investigation destroyed what was left. Arthur called from the hospital. My father wanted to see me, needed to talk before deciding. I almost told Arthur that Larry Parker wasn't my father anymore, but I went, because I wanted him to see my face when he realized what his choices cost. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and failure. My father looked small in the bed. I pulled up a chair, sat down, waited. Kai, he finally said, voice weak. Arthur told me what happened, what Sean did, what I did to you. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected. You chose to believe Sean without looking at the evidence. You chose to fire me without investigation. You chose to throw me out of the company and your life because I threatened your image of the golden child. Those were decisions. He closed his eyes. Looked like he'd aged 20 years and 6 months. I'm sorry. Too late. You know what I did after you fired me? I asked. I slept in my car for a month. Couldn't get an apartment because your HR department was destroying my references. Couldn't get a job in my field because everyone heard I stole from my own family. I stocked shelves at a hardware store for $12 an hour, while Sean spent the money he stole from you on whatever he wanted. My father's heart monitor started beeping faster. You want to know the worst part? I continued. It wasn't losing the job. Wasn't even losing you. It was realizing that nothing I ever did mattered. 12 years of work. All meaningless because you'd already decided Sean was the son worth keeping. That's not true. It's completely true. You gave him a VP position straight out of college. You defended him without question. You believed his lies about me having a breakdown. You looked at evidence of theft and decided I was the criminal because it was easier than admitting your favorite son was robbing you blind. My father's face had gone pale, but I wasn't done. Connolly's buying the company. You know that? He nodded. Know who gave them the evidence? Who documented every illegal thing Sean did? Who built the case that convinced them you were desperate enough to sell for pennies? I watched his eyes widen, watched him connect the dots. That's right. Your disowned son. I leaned forward. I spent 6 months at rock bottom putting together the evidence destroying everything you built. Not because I'm vindictive, because it was the only way to clear my name and stop Sean from bleeding you dry until there was nothing left. Kai, barely a whisper. You want forgiveness? Want me to say we can rebuild our relationship? That I understand you were manipulated? I stood up. Can't do it. Sean manipulated you, sure. But you let him. You wanted to believe him. I walked to the door. Stopped. Connolly's offer is fair. You should take it. Pay lawyers, settle with investors. Whatever's left is yours. But I'm done. We're done. You disowned me 6 months ago. Consider it mutual. What about the company? Your grandfather's legacy? Grandfather's legacy died when you let Sean turn it into his personal bank. I opened the door. Kai. My father's voice stopped me. Are you working for Connolly? Operations director, starting next month. 40% raise over what I made at Parker. I left him there. Walked out of that hospital room without looking back. Left him small and broken in that bed, finally understanding what it cost to choose wrong. Arthur called 2 days later. My father had signed the deal. Connolly Manufacturing acquired Parker Industrial Supply for $18 million, about half what it would have been worth before the scandal. My father walked away with approximately $7.2 million after paying off debts, legal fees, and settling with the investors who were threatening lawsuits. The board members got their contractually obligated cuts. Arthur kept his job in the transition, though I suspected he'd be retiring soon. The employees kept their jobs. Connolly wanted the skilled labor and client relationships. That was the one good thing to come out of this. The people who had nothing to do with Sean's theft got to keep their livelihoods. Sean got a federal indictment, facing 12 to 15 years for wire fraud and embezzlement. His lawyer was trying to cut a deal, but the prosecutors weren't interested. They wanted to make an example of him. I didn't go to the trial. Didn't need to see it. The outcome was inevitable. Started my job at Connolly in November. Nice office. Good salary. Respect from coworkers who didn't think I was a thief. Adrian called me into his office after my first week. You did good work bringing this to us, Kai. Parker Industrial's assets are going to make us a lot of money once we integrate them properly. Glad I could help. You want to know what happens to your father's legacy now? I thought about it. The machines my grandfather built by hand. The warehouse where I'd loaded trucks at 5 a.m. Not really, I said. Adrian nodded. Fair enough, but for what it's worth, you saved that company. 6 months after the acquisition, Arthur showed up at my apartment with coffee. Thought you might want company, he said. We sat at my kitchen table. He poured 2 cups. Your father sold his house, moving to Arizona. Says the cold bothers him. Good for him. He wanted me to give you something. Arthur pulled out an envelope. Said he tried calling, but you never answered. I looked at the envelope. Didn't reach for it. It's a check. From the sale. Your share if things had gone differently. I don't want his money. I know. But he wanted me to tell you something. Arthur took a sip. He said he knows he can't fix what he broke, but the money's yours anyway. No strings. Just what you should have gotten if he hadn't been a fool. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Finally opened it. Check for $400,000. My share of what was left after the legal nightmare Sean created. Blood money. Guilt money. Too late money. But also rent money. Car money. Never stock shelves at 2 a.m. again money. I folded it and put it in my pocket. Tell him I got it. Arthur nodded. He also wanted me to tell you that Sean's trial date is set. March. They're not offering deals anymore. The prosecution wants the full sentence. Good. You planning to go? No. I sipped the coffee. I don't need to see it. He destroyed himself. I just gave him the rope. That's one way to look at it. Arthur poured himself another cup. Other way is you survived something that should have buried you, and you came out the other side intact. That's winning. I thought about it. 6 months ago, I was at rock bottom. Now I had an apartment that didn't have mold. A job that paid real money. Respect from people who understood what I could do. A father who'd finally admitted he was wrong, even if it was too late to matter. Sean was going to prison. My father had lost everything he built. The company my grandfather started was now owned by strangers. We drank in silence for a while. My phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. Meeting tomorrow about expansion plans. Connolly was growing fast, absorbing Parker's assets and looking to acquire more. He wanted me on the team making it happen. Sean went to trial in March. Got 14 years federal time. Heard he cried during sentencing. Said he was sorry. Too late for sorry. My father moved to Arizona. Retirement community. Still had money left but not enough to rebuild. I see him once a year now. Awkward lunch where we talk about the weather and his golf game and anything except what happened. The heart attack and stress aged him 20 years. He asks about my business. He doesn't ask about Sean anymore. Some relationships break and stay broken. I don't hate him. Don't hate Sean either, really. Just feel this vast empty space where family used to be. They chose comfort. I chose survival. And we all paid the price. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.